Then I heard them both scream. The kind of scream you only scream when someone you love is close to dying. I tried to open my eyes, but darkness swallowed me whole. Pain tore through my chest, and every breath was molten. That's when I realized I was the one who had been shot. Love ain't free. Everybody who says they love you is going to want something in return. Some people just want you to love them back. Some people want to use you, and others want to control you. Those kind of people like the way it feels to hurt someone who really loves them, who really cares. What's that saying? Pray or be preyed on? Yeah, that's love, at least in my world. But I tried not to let it harden me. I used to think love was compliance. Thought bending to his every word made me loyal, made me worthy. Even though I didn't want to, I still bent for him. I was reluctant, but hopeful. Hopeful that he wanted the best for me. Hopeful that if I stayed soft enough, obedient enough, patient enough, I'd finally have the love I deserved. So, I complied. I tried to fit into the version of me they manipulated me to be, but I could never breathe in that box. And when I finally broke out of that mental prison, I didn't know how to act. My desires grew insatiable. The taste of freedom, of control, for the first time in my life, was addicting. And I had no plans on stopping until I got stopped. Because just like love, freedom ain't free. And baby, someone's always got to pay the price for a soul running the streets like she never had a home. This is a velvet tale where love costs more than the heart can afford, and the receipt always shows up at the worst time. Something about the sweet smell of the swisher and the savory scent of weed turned me on. Khalil liked to take deep, long hits at a blunt, too. His deep, brown, full lips wrapped around the blunt so tight, not even air could slip through. I licked my lips, lost in the sight of him as smoke drifted through the car. Every exhale carried heat, and every slow drag stirred something inside me. I shifted, pleasuring myself to the rhythm of the music, breath hitching, letting the tension rise between us like a storm waiting to break. He watched me shamelessly, puffing and pulling, coughing and moaning, as the air grew thick with want. He reached over, his hand finding mine, trying to slow me down as he took another pull, wanting to savor the quiet before the rush. But I couldn't. I'd waited a whole year to have him this close again, and I wasn't about to let the night slip away. The way his eyes roamed my body said everything. And when he finally leaned in, his breath brushed my skin. His mouth found its way to the places that ached for him, working twice as hard as my hand ever could. Every nerve in me woke up. My back arched against the Tesla doors, fingers tangled in his hair as I let go of every thought and allowed pleasure to consume me. I was so close, I could see stars, until the sound of yelling cut through the air. We tried to ignore it. I focused on his wet tongue, hungry and deliberate, until the window shook. That's when Khalil's head snapped up, eyes wide. Fear gripped my heart. And from the look on his face, there were only two possibilities: the cops or my husband. I turned slowly, heart racing, breath uneven, the weight of the moment pinning itself to my chest. Just as my nose touched the cold, frosty glass, my eyes met Joshua's angry ass face. He stood outside, breath fogging the window, eyes full of fire. And when I saw that fire, I knew one of us wasn't making it home tonight. Get down, Khalil whispered, reaching under his seat. Baby, no, I whispered back. Get the fuck down. Then, pop! Glass shattered. Something wet hit my face, cold and fast. I closed my eyes. I squeezed them shut so tight I saw stars. I couldn't bear to look. I couldn't bear to see who had fallen. I didn't want to see either of the men I loved like that. Khalil had my heart, but Joshua had my life, my babies, my history. And no matter where that bullet landed, nothing would ever be the same. Then I heard them both scream. The kind of scream you only scream when someone you love is close to dying. And I tried to open my eyes, but darkness swallowed me whole. Pain tore through my chest and every breath was molten. That's when I realized I was the one who had been shot. I collapsed beside the Tesla as sirens wailed in the distance, my hands searching blindly for something solid, anything real. I just needed to know I was still here. Khalil's voice cracked as he held me down. Baby, please, be still. What about my babies? I whispered, shame and guilt bleeding together with the pain. As the paramedics lifted me onto the stretcher, I caught Khalil's eyes, full of tears, full of fear. The look on his face said he didn't think I'd make it. Joshua had that same look. And in that moment, I knew this might be the end of me. I closed my eyes and drifted off, praying that if God was waiting for me, He would finally love me with the kind of love I never received on earth. You're probably wondering how the hell we got here so fast, right? Well, let me introduce myself. I'm Charity Jordan, stay-at-home mom by day, adulterer by night. I have 4 kids with my husband, Joshua Jordan. We met in high school. Oh, Khalil. He's this guy I met a couple of years back. He was friends with one of the guys my sister dealt with. It was supposed to be a hookup, but we spent the entire night talking about how we don't normally do this. It was the first time I ever met a man I felt like I could just be with. No expectations of sex, no performing. We just enjoyed being around each other. So we exchanged numbers, and the next day he invited me on a date, and we've been locked in ever since. I don't want you to get the wrong impression of me because honestly, I'm a good girl at heart. I like to read, gossip, and spend time with my kids, just like any other 32-year-old mother. I used to be a bit of a recluse, though, always in the house. And since I didn't really have to work, I only dealt with my sister, my kids, or Jay. I never really liked other people. But last year, something in me snapped. Something I believe was years in the making. But I can't explain it. One moment, I was content with a clean house, well-fed kids, and a little boring intimacy at night. And the next, I was craving something wild. Something that made me feel alive again. Something like Khalil. The kind of man who reminded me that beds weren't the only places you could make love. I know, it's a lot. So let me take you back to the beginning. I was born and raised in Oakland, California, to my parents, Brenda and Ponty James. Mom said she went into labor with me around 8 in the evening, right after choir practice ended. By the time they reached the hospital, I was already halfway into the world. She used to say that the look on my face made her think I carried a little more sin than most people are born with. But the truth is, I wasn't a troublesome baby. I only cried when I needed something. I liked to be clean, fed, and entertained. And since Mom wasn't working at the time, she kept up with all my little needs. My older sister, Dream, treated me like I was her best friend. Mom said she'd sleep beside me almost every night once I could talk. She'd play her CDs, sing, and dance until I drifted off. She was just so happy not to be alone anymore, she never let me out of her sight. But as I got older, things changed. No more happy parents. No more hugs for nothing. I don't remember much, just that asking for simple things suddenly became too much. Couldn't ask for a snack without being called greedy. Couldn't cry without being called ungrateful. Couldn't say no without getting a whooping. The house grew stricter and strangely churchy. I started getting lessons in modesty from my father. He'd say things like, "Ladies should only like one man at a time," or "Good girls don't talk to boys too long. It's improper." And whenever I wore a dress, I'd be corrected for the smallest things: bending over, sitting the wrong way, laughing too loudly. I didn't understand it then, but I felt the weight of being watched, not protected, but monitored. Mom would whisper reminders to keep my legs closed when I sat, and she'd cover my thighs with a cloth. One Sunday, a church member took my hand and complimented my dress. I giggled. I was only 7 and proud of my outfit. But later that night, I learned there were things you couldn't laugh about in our house. Dad punished me for it, harshly, telling me I'd let the devil use me. I looked to Mom for help, but she turned her head away. And after that, I started shutting down, quieting myself, shrinking my laughter, and ignoring every man who tried to speak to me. My favorite line became, "My daddy said ladies don't talk to boys." And every time I said it, I'd see this strange pride in his eyes. I guess he wanted me for himself. The older I got, the more suffocating it became. The endless church days, the expectations, the watchful eyes. Dream and I spent our teenage years inside pews, being told what good girls were supposed to do, while grown men stared like we were something to pray over and pray on. We begged for freedom, a few days to just be kids, but Daddy called the shots, and Mom just nodded and stayed quiet. She always looked the other way. Mom and Dad were my first front seat view of the curse of submission. When he lashed out at us for something he forgot to do, Mom looked the other way. When he raised his hand in anger, Mom looked the other way. And at night, when he'd disappear into our rooms for much longer than he should have, you guessed it, her fat ass still looked the other way. I was too young to name it back then, too scared to believe what was happening. But the older I got, the more I understood. Silence can be just as violent as the act itself. One night, I told Dream I'd tell Mom, and I actually believed she'd get him to stop. Dream told me she already knew and didn't care, but I couldn't believe that, so I tried anyway. I waited till Daddy was gone, and I sat next to my mother, tracing the charms on her anklet while I tried to find the right words. My heart was beating so fast I could barely breathe. "Can you tell Daddy to stop coming in my room at night?" I asked softly. She froze, her eyes snapping to mine like I'd said something forbidden. For a moment, I thought the anger on her face was for him, that she'd finally see me and finally protect me. But instead, she stood up and slapped me across the face. Her voice cut like glass. "You've been walking around here dressed like a grown woman," she spat. "So deal with what comes with being a woman." I was 15. The nightmare had started when I was 7. How could any of it have been my fault? I didn't understand power or manipulation. I only knew that I felt dirty, violated, and unprotected. I cried until my chest ached, until I couldn't breathe. My sobs were silent, but the pain was loud. Then Dream found me, my sister, my safe place, and she lifted me off the floor, cradled me in her arms, and carried me to her room. She didn't ask questions. She just held me like she could glue my broken pieces back together. She put on her Brandy CD, the one she always played when she wanted peace, and kissed my forehead until I drifted to sleep. When I woke up, I heard her yelling. Dream and Daddy were arguing. Her voice was fierce, trembling with rage, but unshaken. She told him if he ever came near us again, she'd call CPS, tell the church, tell his job. She said she'd ruin his whole world before she let him ruin ours any further. And after that night, it stopped. But I was already broken. Broken that my mother believed I deserved to be violated. Broken that my father took what was never his. Broken that my sister had to be the one to protect us, even though she'd suffered too. That year, they finally enrolled us in public school. The only condition? We weren't allowed to tell anyone what had happened. We could go out, hang with friends, as long as we stayed quiet and kept going to church. But silence didn't free us from his abuse. It just changed form. Daddy still found ways to control us. Passive, cruel ways. He stopped buying us clothes that fit, made us wear things so outdated no one would notice us. If we ever brought home something new, he'd tear it up. Dream refused to let him win. She found a friend who worked at a store and would sneak us clothes. Soft jeans, cute tops, new underwear. We kept them hidden in our lockers like little pieces of rebellion. That was Dream. No matter what, she found a way. But me? I was easier to break. And when he said no, I just cried and accepted it. I always felt the need to deny that extra sin Mama said I had. I wanted to prove her wrong, in a way. So when Dream got ready to leave for college, I panicked. I sat on her bed as she packed. Lamps, bedding, snacks, all the stuff her friend boosted for her. And Brandy played low in the background. What am I going to do without you, sis? Who's going to protect me? I sobbed. She smiled, even through her tears. You got to protect yourself now, TT. I know you can. I seen you play Tomb Raider. I laughed a little. That was our inside joke. I couldn't fight in real life, but in that game, I never missed. When she finally moved out, we hugged like Silly and Nettie from The Color Purple. Daddy ripped us apart just like Mister did to them. And I never forget the look in her eyes, the fear, the guilt, the helpless love. And that same night, he came to my room again. Normally, I would just clock out mentally, but something in me had changed. I wasn't that little girl anymore. Something about the way he sounded on top of me made me sick, and I vomited all over him. He left, furious and humiliated. He told me I was lucky he didn't kill me for that. But that was the last time he ever touched me. And a part of me believes that was God, stepping in to save me when he knew I couldn't do it for myself. School felt so empty without Dream. She'd been my protector, my best friend, my other half. Without her, the world felt too big and just too cold. I spent my lunches alone, sitting by the window, reading anything I could find. Romance novels, mystery books, stories about girls who survived worse and still found a way to love. Then, one day, a boy walked up to me, light-skinned, clean-cut, kind eyes, handed me a flower. I just wanted to cheer you up, he said. I didn't say much, just smiled a little. But every day after that, he brought me another flower. I started drying them out, turning them into potpourri, and tucking them into a little glass jar on my dresser. He started bringing me lunch, sometimes too. Sometimes fast food, sometimes something from home. I didn't understand why he cared, but his quiet kindness did something for me. It reminded me that maybe love didn't always have to hurt, that it could be soft and finally see me as something to protect. And for the first time in a long time, I believed I might deserve that kind of love. One day, he brought me one of my favorite meals to school for lunch. He even had a little candle he lit and placed on the bench while we ate. I remember staring at him, stunned, flattered, and a little unsure how to react. That was probably one of the first times I ever felt special. He saw my hesitation and didn't push. Instead, he started talking about his mom, his dreams of owning a club one day, and the dark stories of his family's business. At first, I hated it, he said, eyes fixed on the ground. We had a lot of nice things, but I watched those movies where the drug dealer's family gets killed, and I didn't want to be one of them. But my dad's a goon, a real one. I started to see things his way, and I started to feel powerful. I hummed softly, debating if I should ask the question on my mind. He looked up, almost like he could read my thoughts. Go ahead, he said with a half smile. I've heard it all. Are you afraid of going to hell? He laughed so hard that bits of his food went flying, and I couldn't help but laugh too. We're all going to hell, he said, once he caught his breath. That's not true, I replied. I'm saved. I'm not going to hell with people like you. As soon as the words left my mouth, I saw something change in his eyes. He flinched, looking down at his hands. I realized I'd hurt him, though I hadn't meant to. At least that's what my daddy said, I added quickly, trying to soften the blow. But it didn't work. There he was, this boy who had been nothing but kind to me, who had made me laugh, who made me feel safe. Yet, I'd just thrown my father's words soaked in hypocrisy, at him like a stone. I felt conflicted. How could someone the church would call a sinner treat me with more tenderness than the man who preached holiness in our home? In that moment, something shifted inside me. All those lessons about being saved and unsaved started to blur. Maybe there was a gray space in between, a space where people were just human, and pain didn't ask about faith before it knocked on your door. He got up quietly, left the candle burning, and walked away. Left his food, his bag, and a silence I wasn't ready for. He didn't come back the next day, or the next. A whole week went by, and our bench stayed empty. I even asked his friend, Antoine, if he still came to school, and he said yes, but wouldn't tell me more. At first, I was mad. How could he turn so cold after one mistake? But when I replayed my words in my head, I understood. I'd wounded him, the only person who had ever made me feel loved. So I did what any love-struck 15-year-old girl would do. I went looking for him. I found his address in his lunch bag, the one he'd left behind, and went to his house before school. I remembered him saying he walked to school every morning. So I waited outside with a box of Pop-Tarts and an apology rehearsed in my head. When he came out, I blurted, I'm sorry, before he could say a word. He just stared at me, half confused, half amused, and then laughed. The tension melted. You're lucky I really like you, he said, as we started walking to school together. If it were anyone else, I probably wouldn't have never spoken to you again. And what makes me so different? I asked. He thought for a moment, then smiled. That big, bright smile that made his eyes squint and his skin glow like polished bronze. I just really like you, he said simply. Really? I asked, stopping in the middle of the sidewalk. When he said it again, something inside me melted. That warm, fuzzy feeling you get from your favorite dessert on a perfect day. Like sweet ice cream on a hot afternoon or warm apple pie when it's cold outside. I'd never felt that before. Never believed someone could look at me and see good. And I really want you to like me too. He kissed my hand softly, and something inside me fluttered. Not out of fear this time, but curiosity, maybe even hope. For once, I wasn't thinking about the past. Not my father, not the pain, not the shame. Just this boy, this moment, this strange new thing that felt like healing in disguise. So I smiled and whispered, I think I already do. He smiled back, wide and bright, the kind of smile that makes you believe in forever. And in that moment, I truly thought we'd have one. It was in the way we handled each other, carefully and considerately. I'd seen him be rough with other people, talk to them crazy, even other girls who got on his nerves. But with me, he took time to think before losing his cool, if it ever got to that point. That was rare at our age. We started dating seriously at 16, and by 18, I was pregnant. You know, my daddy was not happy about this. He didn't like sharing me, and a part of me liked that he was angry. I wanted him to see me happy with someone my age, to see me being loved right by a man who cared for and cherished me the way he was supposed to. Needless to say, my dad kicked me out. That was the last time I saw either of my parents. My mom was embarrassed, and my dad's rage ran so deep, I was sure he'd kill that baby if he ever got close to it. So, Jay moved me in with his family. Yes, his drug dealing, gun toting family. The type who had thousands of dollars of product just sitting in their garage at any given moment. But those people took care of me. I'm telling you, my pregnancy living with them was the best few months of my life. They had a fat estate with 2 additional houses on the same plot. They let me and Jay have one all to ourselves, no strings attached. His mom made the staff wait on me hand and foot. I never had to shop for anything. If I so much as coughed, a bottle of medicine would be delivered within the next hour. I was a kept woman, all because I fell in love with the son of the city's hottest dealer. Once, I went for a walk to get some exercise, and one of the girls in the neighborhood thought she was about to make me feel stupid, pointing at my oversized belly hanging over my $500 jeans. I waved her off and kept walking. But then I heard Jay running out from the house with the dogs, guards, and 2 of his brothers. They started walking behind me, daring her to speak again, and she sped up. But before she could take off, Jay put his hand on her car door, looked her straight in the eyes, and said, Stuff like that could get you killed. She swallowed so hard, I thought she swallowed her own throat. She sped off, and I never heard anything from her again. I was so happy to have protection, I never even asked myself how the hell he knew what she said to me. Turns out, he had something on my phone that let him hear my conversations, on and off the line. I laughed when he told me, thought he was joking, but his face stayed stone cold. That's like some movie type shit, I said, doing my best to hide my fear. He smirked. Do you even know who you dealing with, baby? That gave me pause. It was the first time I realized if I ever got a line, he might do to me what he did to others. Even still, I enjoyed my pregnancy. Real talk. But I started to feel that anxious pull, that whisper that told me to stay guarded. I had this feeling that my fairy tale was shifting into something darker, not because of his family, but because of him. He was like one of those beautiful, expensive paintings that look flawless from afar. But the closer you get, the more those perfect shapes don't look so perfect anymore. Jay could be a dream in love, but make him mad, and he could become your worst nightmare. After we had our first baby, Alexis, He wasn't really hands on. He leaned on the staff more than I liked. Every time I left the house to see my sister or run errands, I'd come back to find my baby in the kitchen with Ulysses, the cook, or in the laundry room with Grace, the house manager. I didn't mind the help. They loved Alexis and treated her like their own, and I loved them too. But I wanted our baby to know her daddy's hands, the way I never knew my own. I was so serious about that, about having a man who wanted to be a father, who cherished our baby girl and set the standard for every man who'd come after him. I refused to be like my mother, that silent doormat of a woman who let life happen to her. So every time I came home and found someone else holding my baby, I brought her back to him. The first few times, he apologized, said it wouldn't happen again. But when Alexis turned about 6 months old, she started noticing when I wasn't home, and she'd cry hard when she realized I was gone. Jay hated those fits. Alexis would swing her little fist and push him away, crying like her heart was breaking. She be crying like she ain't with her daddy. I don't like that shit, he said. Maybe if you actually held her and loved on her the way I do, she wouldn't, I said softly. He went quiet, too quiet. I heard him inhale long and deep, but I never heard him exhale. That was never a good sign. So what? A sinner like me don't know how to love his own baby? He said, voice eerily calm. His eyes narrowed, head tilted slightly, waiting for me to say something reckless. Jay, I apologize for that a million times. But now I don't love my baby? It's 'cause I'm a sinner, right? I never said that, I replied, trying to stay calm, careful. I just want better for Alexis than I had. You know what you were trying to say. I want her to love her daddy like I do. I stepped closer, softened my voice, and grabbed his waist. His shoulders loosened just a little. He placed a hand in my hair and he hugged me back. We swayed to the rhythm of the lullaby coming from the side of Alexis's expensive-ass crib. I looked relaxed, but being with Jay taught me how good an actress I really was. You know those cop shows where there's a live bomb, time's running out, and they're waiting to hear which cord to cut, but they only have 10 seconds. So they just pick one and close their eyes, praying it's the right one? That was me in that moment. I wasn't relieved because I knew this bomb named Jay could go off at any second without warning. Once we moved out of his parents' home and got our own place, we were juiced. At the time, we had 2 girls, Lexus and Angel, but I was pregnant with Allegra. His pops gave him $45,000 just to furnish it, and we went all out. Custom beds, custom couches, brand new hot tub for that fat ass backyard. It wasn't like his parents ever made us feel like a bother, but I wanted to make love to my husband and be loud without fear of his dad hearing us or his mom seeing us. So, living with them saved us a lot of money, but I just wanted my independence. Our first place was in a nice neighborhood full of other black families. Beautiful couples where the men worked all day and the women stayed home, spending what their husbands earned. Needless to say, I fit right in. The homes were luxury, mid-sized places with big backyards. Just walking through them in the mornings gave me real housewife vibes. But once I settled in, I started noticing things I didn't like. During the day, the neighborhood was lively and vibrant. At night, it turned into an episode of Desperate Housewives. I'd hear women screaming, crying, loud thumps, and the occasional gunshot or two. It's one thing to hear a random gunshot, but knowing it might be a man using it on a woman who loved him, that terrified me. Then I realized why Jay liked this neighborhood so much. But I stayed agreeable, just so I wouldn't end up like those women, and it worked for a while. I kept him satisfied, fed, and rested so he'd keep his temper to himself. He'd come home in a foul mood and I'd be there, dinner ready, lingerie soft and short, doing whatever it took to keep the peace. But giving my body just to keep him calm made me sick. It reminded me of those old wounds inflicted by my father, that feeling of lying there and surrendering something that should have been mine in exchange for temporary safety. I told myself I was surviving, but deep down, I knew it was the same pain repeating itself. If I were an oven, my daddy did the preheating and Jay came in with the fire to finish the job because what my father did was bad, but Jay, he destroyed what little good I had left in me. One night, he came home darker than usual, his eyes colder. Normally, the sight of me waiting in lace would soften him, but not that night. Let's just say his energy was dark and chaotic. What happened after isn't something I like to replay. I'll just say it like this. I tried to please him, tried to keep things calm, but he turned the act into punishment. It was rough, violent, and humiliating. I couldn't breathe, couldn't even think. And the next thing I remember was waking up in the ER. They told me I'd been unconscious for almost 30 minutes. Girl, the next time you try to give head, come up for air. Dream joked as she and Jay laughed together about it. But I wasn't laughing. He had hurt me badly, and the look he gave me as he laughed with my sister chilled me straight through. I used to think men hitting their wives was the worst kind of abuse, but Jay showed me differently. He never lost his temper, so I could never see it coming. I think he liked it that way. His unpredictable attacks made it damn near impossible to protect myself, and he was a master of making people believe he was the victim. He could flip any story, and everyone would believe him. The night I got discharged, he demanded intimacy again. My body shut down. I couldn't feel anything. He didn't even notice, and he didn't even care. He just did his thing as my mind drifted away and my face turned to stone. Somehow, I convinced myself that this was love, and I stayed. Then, he started cheating on me. Jay would come home smelling like another woman, stripping down right in front of me, still careless with the evidence. Did you even try to clean yourself after? Looks like you just pulled out and ran home. I snapped as I wiped the kitchen counter. What else would you expect from a sinner? He said, giving me that cold, blank stare that could burn a hole through a wall. I froze, shook my head. The disrespect was unbelievable. So that night, I packed my things and went to my sister's house. But I only stayed there for a week because he lied to Dream about why I left in the first place. My older sister may have been single, but she was a sucker for our love. He greased her up something good, too. Told her I was the only woman he ever loved and that if he ever lost me, he'd never love again. She came into her guest room where I slept cozily with my 3 kids at the time and told me to go back to my man. Not a lot of niggas can take accountability when they mess up, sis, she said, tears in her eyes. But I always knew y'all had something special. Just give him one more chance. She helped me get the kids dressed, and I just went along with it because she looked up to Jay and me. I never saw my older sister believe in love until Jay and I met, fell in love, and built a family. And I couldn't break her heart and tell her it was all a lie, that the man I painted as a dream had turned out to be a nightmare. So we went back home. That same night, he came into our bedroom holding a box and sat on the edge of the bed. He started chatting about bills, his pop's health, and the kids' school stuff. I lay on my side, scrolling through my phone, occasionally nodding or reacting with fake shock to make it look like I cared, even though I didn't. My pops ain't doing too good, he said, opening the box and pulling out a powdery white substance. He laid it on the glass tray that sat on the bed. I looked at him like he spit on the sheets. He knew I didn't want that stuff around my kids. but I said nothing. They're saying he only got 4 months left, and even that's generous. He was talking between short sniffs, his tone fading in and out. Then he looked at me with those evil eyes, pushed a rolled up dollar bill and mirror toward me. I just stared, my hand gripping the bed, fighting the urge. Things have been rough lately, babe. I know this. I want to give you a break from all the bull, he said, kneeling beside the bed like he was proposing again. I hesitated. I had only seen Jay use it before. He always looked calm and happy after. For the first time in a long time, he was offering me some kind of peace. A break from lies, the cheating, the pain. My heart raced. I resisted for as long as I could. But then I heard my daddy's voice in my head saying, I always knew you had a little more sin in you than most. You'd think hearing that would stop me, but it pushed me closer instead. After a few minutes of fighting with myself, I finally took the rolled bill and did what I told myself I'd never do. It burned at first. I tilted my head back, trying to escape the sting in my nose. Then came the wave. Warm, light, free. For a moment, I felt like God had clocked me out of my misery. Jay was a dealer, so he knew exactly how to dose me. He started small, just enough for me to get comfortable. Every weekend, we'd drop the kids off at his parents' house, get dressed up, go to dinner, drink too much, get high, and disappear into the night. We'd act wild, free, untouchable. Then Sunday would come and we'd sober up, pick up the kids, and pretend we were just a normal couple again. It became a cycle I couldn't break. Every time I got close to calling him out, or he got caught doing something he wasn't supposed to be doing, he'd offer me another fun night out. Let's just clock out for a couple of days, he'd say, and I'd fold. Every time. We lived like that until I got pregnant with our last son, Baby Jay, named after him. We were terrified when we found out, and that fear drove us to church every Sunday for a month, begging God to make sure our baby came out healthy. By month 6, the doctor said everything looked perfect. No deformities, strong heartbeat, a healthy baby boy. We were relieved. The drugs, the cheating, the chaos, it all stopped. At least for a while. And we started falling in love again. Jay would read to my belly every night, kissing it between every line. He'd tell our baby that he was coming into a family that loved him and that his mama was the queen, the only woman who had ever held his heart long enough to change it. And I believed him. For the first time in years, he was acting like the man I married. Protective, present, content. When I went into labor with baby Jay, we were making love, wrapped up in something that almost felt like peace. He had me against the wall, one leg up on the custom holder he'd had installed for me, as he moved with a deep, careful rhythm, gentle enough not to hurt the baby growing inside me. He held my back and kissed my neck, driving me half crazy in that way only he could. My legs were spread so wide you'd think I was already giving birth. And just when he was lost in the moment, I felt my belly tighten, something sharp, something violent. A contraction. Then, suddenly my water broke. Jay laughed, thinking I had just let go all over him. Damn, I had you like that? He asked with that smug grin of his. I think that was my water, I said, and he jumped back so fast, his face changed from cocky to terrified. By the time we got to the hospital, Baby Jay's head was already showing. The staff told me not to push until we got into the room, but the second I hit that bed, one strong push was all it took. Baby Jay came out kicking and screaming like someone had disturbed his good sleep. Jay and I sat there crying tears of joy, sharing soft kisses between the chaos. Baby Jay felt like a new beginning. I was just grateful I got another chance to love the man I married instead of the monster he had become. That night felt like a honeymoon. Jay made sure I had everything I needed. His mother brought in a huge cart of high-end postpartum supplies: pads, diapers, cooling packs, healing balms, everything. My father-in-law came through with a full buffet from Zola's soul food restaurant for everyone to enjoy as they met the new baby. It felt like the baby shower we never had. Once everyone left, Jay arranged for a masseuse to give me a 2-hour rub-down. The first hour was full body. The second was a head massage that sent me right into an exhausted, well-deserved sleep. I had everything a new mother could ask for, and I appreciated it, but I still had that feeling, that little whisper that always came when things were too good. The one that told me to keep my eyes open because peace never lasted long with Jay. But for the first couple of months with baby Jay, things were so good I pushed that voice deep down. I wanted to believe he changed. I wanted to believe I was finally worthy of a man who loved me enough to change for me. So I leaned in deeper than I ever did before. I love Jay more now than I ever had. He was my air, my calm. And when he left the room, I swear my chest forgot how to breathe until he came back. He made me feel safe, protected, like I could finally trust a man not to hurt me. So when his ex, Janine, messaged me on Instagram saying she had a baby the same age as baby Jay, claiming Jay might be the father, I told her bitter ass to stop being messy and move on. I had no reason to believe my husband, the man I adored, would ever stoop that low. Not now. Not after we'd finally gotten it right. I didn't even question him about her accusations. That's how much I trusted him. One night, though, he said something that made my stomach turn. We were watching a podcast on YouTube as baby Jay slept between us. The topic was about whether you could use protection with someone you'd already been with. I leaned over and kissed him playfully, whispering, "I'd never make you wear rubber." He looked me dead in the eye and said, "I never wore a rubber in my life." My mind went back to his wild days in the streets and my heart dropped. So he'd been with me and whoever else without protection? I shook it off. Didn't want to ruin the moment. Things had been good. I just let it slide. Until the day he was served with paternity papers. That morning, he'd been extra sweet. Brought breakfast, drove the older kids to school, even kept baby Jay home from the daycare so we could take him to the park. We came back and sat in the driveway, and he buttered me up something awful. "You know, when I met you, I knew we were going to enjoy life together," he said, eyes glossy. "Oh, yeah?" I smiled, leaning into his affection. "Yeah, we got something special, Charity. I don't know what I'd do without you." "Well, you'll never have to find out," I said, kissing his cheek and hugging him tight. Just then, a black car with government tags pulled up, windows tinted dark. "Joshua Hassan Jordan?" the man asked. "That's me," Jay said, stepping forward, his tone cautious. "You've been served," the man replied, handing him a manila envelope, snapping a quick picture, and driving off. "What is that, Jay?" I asked, nervous. "Probably some work stuff," he said, leaning against the car, opening the envelope slow as molasses. To this day, I believe he knew exactly what was in that envelope before he even opened it. "Damn," he muttered, covering his face. Remember, Jay never liked to look bothered, so when I saw him sweating over a stack of papers, I knew it was bad. Now I snatched the envelope and started reading. And just like that, our perfect 2-year run was over. The thick stack of papers read, "Petition for Paternity," in bold black letters. I flipped through to the name, the same name that had shown up in my inbox just days after baby Jay was born. Janine Acosta. I was pissed. I threw the envelope at his head and kicked him so hard he lost his composure. "You are never going to change," I said, breathless and furious. "It ain't mine. She just trying to start trouble between us because I wouldn't get back with her." "Shut up! That don't even make no damn sense. But what would I expect from a crappy ass husband?" Jay did not take failure well, and hearing that from me was a blow to his ego. I knew it. He hung his head in shame, but honestly, I had nothing else to say. He fooled me again, made me think I could be safe with him, that he finally knew how to hold my heart, only to crush it for the 100th time. I realized then, he never loved me. He loved humiliating me. I took my ring off and threw it into the garden, which was over 20 feet away. "Don't do this, baby," he cried, but I wasn't having it. "Don't fucking call me unless it's for my kid," I said as I got into my Jeep and sped off to my sister's house. Dream, my older sister, lived almost 3 cities away from our current home. She had just graduated from college and landed a good job right around the time Jay and I moved out of his parents' house. She wanted to be the kind of auntie who showed up, and I was glad to have her a little closer after being apart for so long. It took me almost an hour and a half to get to her house, a beachfront home that was plush and luxurious. Dream always had the best taste in everything: clothes, decor, homes, cars, and men. Her house was the perfect hideout from my no good, lying, cheating husband. On the drive, I texted her our secret word: cactus. It meant I was in crisis and needed her to get the spare room ready. No questions asked. When I pulled up, she was already waiting with a plush warm robe, a bottle of wine, and one of those big sister hugs I desperately needed. Dream and I held each other until we got inside. Then she sat me down and gave me those "talk to me" eyes. "I'm so stupid," I cried, gulping down the wine. "I actually believe this bullshit about us getting serious about our marriage." "Maybe he meant it at first, though. You know how men are," she said, rubbing my knee. Yes, I knew how men were. Self-serving and harmful, just like Daddy. That's what made this even worse. But he didn't, Dream. He never did. This whole relationship has been on his terms. I never got what I wanted or needed. I stayed because of the money, and that makes me feel like a glorified prostitute, not his wife. "But you are his wife, TT. He loves you. He just has demons. His pops told you about the family curse and that it'd get worse before it got better. Don't give up on him now, sis. You don't get it, Dream. He's hurt me in every way possible. I can't go back." I hinted around the abuse, but that was the only secret I kept from her. It was the one thing I was too embarrassed to admit. "Well, what happened this time?" "He got his ex pregnant," I said, crying into my hands. Dream went still. Her hands covered her face and her eyes filled with tears. "Okay, we gonna need something stronger," she said, standing up and grabbing the bottle of wine off the table, only to come back with a bottle of vodka. She slammed it down hard. "That sneaky motherfucker," she spat, sitting back down. "He promised me that if I sent you back after the last time, that wouldn't happen again." I shook my head as the tears run down my face. So he lied to both of us. That was a new low, even for him. "He had the nerve to call me before you got here, asking me to talk to you. But why would I send my sister back to a man who'd do her like that?" Dream's eyes glistened. She was disappointed. She had known Jay before we ever started dating and warned him not to hurt me. She had a soft spot for the sweet, soft-spoken version of him she once knew, but she had no idea about the monster he'd become behind closed doors. Then she started talking about my get back. Said it wasn't fair that he was the only man I'd ever been with, while he'd slept with half the city. She begged me to let her hook me up with one of her friends. Dream had a long list of handsome, successful men who liked to have fun. Some she'd been with, some she'd coached, and some were friends of the men she entertained. Either way, she liked her fridge fully stocked and her rotation of men stocked even fuller. She stood there with hopeful eyes, waiting for me to say yes. I knew if I went there, I could never go back to being the woman who belonged to Jay. I used to brag about my short list of men, but after finding out how reckless he'd been, I regretted ever giving him that honor. Dream slid her iPad toward me, a photo already pulled up. A man so fine I forgot how to blink. I looked at her in disbelief. Is that what you got going on? I asked, half joking, half shocked. She widened her eyes and whispered, There's more where that came from. Wearing the most devious grin. More like him? I asked, wide-eyed and already drooling. Some look even better than him, she said, smirking, this grin even more devious than the last. I took a long drag from the blunt we rolled, sipped the vodka, tilted my head back, and said, Put me in, coach, as I exhaled the smoke slowly from my mouth. Dream was beside herself with excitement. She went through my phone, scrolling for one of those thirst trap pics I'd posted on Facebook, just to make Jay jealous. We can finally put these to good use, she bragged, working my phone and her freak pad, aka her iPad, like a matchmaker. Finally, she set my phone down, tilted her head back, and exhaled dramatically. It's done, she said. Expect your package at 12:30 tonight. Don't wear panties. She smacked her plump ass as if to show how she wasn't wearing any either. In her closet, we sat there for a good 10 minutes, looking for the tightest skirt and easiest to remove top she could find. Niggas don't like having to work too hard when they're taking your clothes off, she said, holding up a crop top with a string that tied in the front. Bra? I asked. You're going to get laid, not to a doctor's appointment. You're not going to need the bra. So we just going to start off like that? No convo? I asked, genuinely confused. Girl, these ain't your friends. He's doing a service for you and getting his rocks off. He's not interested in nothing you got to say. Now get your ass in the shower and stop acting naive. I sucked my teeth, but I did exactly as my sister said. Once I was done, I waited by the door while my phone kept dinging. Text from Chris. He said he was excited to meet me and asked if I smoked. I just stared at the phone until Dream came over and nudged me to respond. Sis, don't be nervous. Men can smell when you're green, and right now, you're a fresh garden. Put your shoulders back, breathe, and answer his questions honestly. You're a beautiful woman. He's lucky to even be texting you, let alone touching you. Act like it. Jay had stripped me of most of my confidence, so I didn't know how to be sexy anymore. But I did know how to reenact what I read in those spicy books, so that's what I leaned on. I took a deep breath and met Chris outside. Seeing him in person was an experience. Perfect teeth, perfect body, perfect face. His broad shoulders filled out that gray sweat jacket he wore over a fresh white tee. Hello, beautiful, he said with a smile so bright it could have been sponsored. I froze for a moment, wondering what I'd done to deserve being in the presence of such a work of art. I snapped out of it, walked up to him with a little sway in my hips, and kissed him. Slow, but confident. He looked surprised, but he welcomed it, wrapping one arm around my waist and another around my neck, drawing me in like I was something precious. Well, hello to you too, beautiful lady, he said, his big, strong arms holding me like I was a baby doll. Come on, let's have a drink, he said, reaching into the car and pulling out bottles of liquor like he was a one-man bar. He mixed them drinks smoothly, smiling the whole time and even handed me a glass. The stars are beautiful tonight, he said, leaning against his orange Mercedes. Yes, they are, I replied, sipping my drink. I always wonder how God decided to order them, he said, gazing up at the sky. I think he took them all and carefully placed them, like diamonds, I said, taking another sip. Really? But why place them? You think he'd scatter them? Too many for all that. Yeah, but I think he did it for us, I said softly. Really? Chris asked, removing his jacket. Yeah, I smiled. Because I believe we all have our own star to cheer us up when we get sad. So he made sure to place them carefully, strategically. He nodded slowly. That's the most interesting theory I've ever heard. I'm going to shut up now, I said, embarrassed that I'd gone all poetic. What if I don't want you to? He said, stepping closer. I think it's sexy when a woman has something to say. Maybe it was the alcohol or the conversation or the fact that he was twice my size that turned me on, but that's the last thing I remember before I pounced on him. Inside the car, the chemistry was instant, like sparks meeting gasoline. Every look, every breath, every touch carried the weight of everything we'd both been holding in. And when he whispered, "You deserve to feel good again," I believed him. Then his mouth found mine. The kiss was slow, deliberate, a language all on its own. The way he touched me made me say things I didn't even recognize as my own voice. Just before I completely unraveled, he pulled me closer, our breaths locking in rhythm. The world shrank until it was just the sound of skin against leather and the hum of something dangerous and beautiful building between us. His body moved with mine, slow at first, then deeper. Every motion a promise and a confession all at once. The car creaked beneath us as he pressed closer, his breath hot against my ear. You like that? He whispered, voice low, trembling. I couldn't answer, only gasp, only feel. And when the moment came, it felt like my body had turned to light. I shook, I cried out, I let go. He looked down at me, dimples deep, sweat glistening across his face. Your man ever make you feel like that? He teased, breathless. Instead of answering, I pulled him closer. Our eyes locked, and the tension between us broke all over again. A wave neither of us could hold back. When it was over, we stayed tangled in silence, hearts racing, breathing each other in. I laid back, staring up at the stars through his sunroof. Tonight, they didn't just twinkle, they shined. One even winked at me. I never felt like that with Jay. Not once. And from that night forward, I started chasing that high, the thrill of being reckless, the freedom of not giving a damn. Chris made my body remember what it felt like to be in control and to dominate in all the right ways. When it was over, he asked for my number, said he'd love to hear more about my theory on stars. I smiled and gave it to him, assuming he was just being polite. But then he texted me the next night. That text stayed with me. I tried not to overthink it, but it felt good to be wanted without begging for it, to be seen without explaining myself. And for once, I didn't feel guilty for feeling good. The next couple of days, he'd check in every evening. Simple things. How's your day? Or, you eat yet? The kind of care I hadn't felt in years. By the time he said he wanted to see me again, I didn't hesitate. I knew it was reckless, but that was becoming my favorite feeling. A couple of nights into my stay at my sister's house, and Dream asked me if I planned to go back to Jay. You don't have to go back all the way, sis, she said softly. Go back, take your heart out of it, and get what you need so you and your kids could be good before you leave. I don't know, Dream. My daughters already spent the first part of their lives watching Jay disrespect me, and me accept it. I don't want to be like Mom. You're nothing like Mom, she said, rubbing my leg. Mom would have never had the courage to leave or even make a plan to. Mom was a coward, but you're not. I feel like one. I let this go on for way too long, I said, tears spilling over. Dream came and kneeled in front of me, locking eyes with me. Go back to prepare, not to be complacent, sis. You put your heart into everything you do, and that's beautiful. But not everybody deserves your all. People like Jay, they deserve the bare minimum. You're right, I said, wiping my tears. Get prepared to get you and your kids out of there, she said, her tone sharpening. But before you go, take some time to give him his own medicine. Then she handed me her freak pad. I looked at her like she had just handed me the whole world, or something way more valuable. Sis, I can't. This is your life, I said, pushing it back to her. And now it's yours too, she said with a smirk. You deserve to have some fun, girl. Don't worry, I got a backup on my other iPad. She slid it into a pretty pink case and tucked it in my purse. Have a ball. Or two, she teased, and we both burst into laughter, the kind that comes from somewhere deep, a kind of release I could only enjoy around my sister. Dream loved me so deeply, I couldn't help but love her even deeper. Besides, she added, turning toward the door, there's a very fine man by the name of Khalil who's been begging me to meet you. Then she walked out of the room with that slow, deliberate sway, the kind that said she had something devious, maybe even divine planned, something that just might heal me. So I took my big sister's advice, her freak pad, her cold honesty, and my cold heart right back to the home I shared with the man I used to love. At first, everything about it felt strange, like I had one foot planted in the life of a wife and a mother, and the other foot dangling off the edge of a reckless world of sex, drugs, and borrowed freedom. But I kept it together. I kept that freak pad tucked deep inside a box in our closet, the one box Jay would never touch, and I only used it when he was out on runs. Not long after coming home, I found a new piece of candy named Tay. He was tall, overly muscular, wildly tatted, the kind of man who looked like sin but talked like salvation. On our first call, he answered the phone like he'd been expecting me all his life. "What's up, babe?" he said, voice deep, raspy, and dipped in a thick accent. Now, if there's one thing I loved more than a deep voice, it's a raspy one with a little grit on it. And Tay had both. He told me he moved to the Bay for work, that he owned a tattoo shop, and that he'd love to give me a couple tattoos. Said my vibe was pure. If only he knew how impure my thoughts were at that point. I took him up on that offer, and our first meeting was at his shop, where he employed only black artists. The vibe was intense but enjoyable. Even though he didn't allow drinking or smoking in the shop, everyone there felt free, bold, uninhibited, yet somehow grounded. I'd never been in the presence of so many creatives. Seeing Tay in his element, quiet but commanding, hands steady, eyes focused, did something to me I wasn't prepared for. He gave me a tiny red heart tattoo, said he wanted me to think of him every time I saw it. And damn if he didn't know exactly what he was doing. Later, we chilled in his car outside his house and just vibed. We talked about everything. Love theories, different religions, sexual positions that deepen connection. I'd always been intellectual, but Jay hated going deep, so I learned to shrink myself for him, keep my thoughts simple and digestible. But between Chris's witty flirting and Tay's warm, fulfilling conversation, I was starting to see the truth. Me and Jay never really had anything in common, not in the ways that mattered. One night, Tay invited me to an art exhibit one of his artists was hosting. She created a whole series on soulmates, and he knew I'd love it based on my theory from our first meeting. He picked me up in his metallic blue old school car, and the whole ride we talked about soulmates like we were unraveling the secrets of life itself. When we arrived, he walked me to the first painting in the series. Two shadow-like figures shaped like puzzle pieces, each in different environments, each holding a flame inside them. By the last piece, the two shadows finally reached each other, and the flame was so big it almost consumed them both. We walked from one painting to the next, our conversations getting deeper, warmer, more intimate. It's crazy how that flame, that passion, goes dull, Tay said, all from the pain of feeling like you'll never find the one you meant for. Your soulmate is supposed to awaken you, but can't manifest them until you awaken yourself. It's such a paradox. I stepped closer to the ninth piece and shook my head. I don't think the fire dims because of pain or discouragement. I think it dims from the ache of knowing they're out there without knowing anything about them at all. Tay sipped his champagne, eyes locked on me. But how many heartbreaks can you survive before you give up? Oh, but heartbreak is the journey, I said, walking him over to the last two paintings. The flame dims because both souls are tired, weary, drained. The search is daunting, but your soulmate? They're the recharge station. If you're never empty, what is there to refill? You can't appreciate the good without surviving the worst, because nobody can love you like the one who was carved for you, and everybody else can only hurt you. Tay stepped back and gave me a look I'd never seen from a man before. Like he wasn't just looking at me, he was seeing me. I threw my hands up dramatically, dancing to the music like I knew I'd just made my point. He laughed and joined me, doing this cute little two-step by my side. The host noticed us vibing and turned the music up louder, inviting everyone else on the floor. Tay set his drink down, grabbed my waist, and kissed me. Soft, but certain, intentional. Like he had been waiting 2 weeks to do it. I kissed him back, because I was waiting too. We didn't make it to his place. We found a cozy unisex bathroom upstairs. No stalls, just a couch and a sink, and the chemistry did the rest. Our conversations had already preheated every inch of me, so when he pulled me close, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. The way he touched me was slow, attentive, like he cared more about the experience than the act. We were as quiet as we could be, but every now and then a sound slipped out from either of us, especially when we both reached our peak. Tay was a gentleman from beginning to end. He asked for consent, checked my comfort every time he changed the pace, and even cleaned me up after, with this soft grin that made me blush like I was 16 again. I panicked for a moment, thinking everyone must have heard us. But when we stepped out, I realized nobody even noticed we'd been gone. The music was loud, the energy high, and for once, I didn't feel guilty for choosing excitement. Leaving Tay that night felt like stepping out of a different universe, one where men listened, touched gently, asked permission, and actually wanted to understand me. A universe I didn't know existed, let alone one I deserved to be in. But the moment I got back home, reality snapped me right out of that dream. The house smelled like Jay had been smoking inside again. The kids' toys were scattered everywhere, even though they'd been at daycare. His shoes were in the middle of the damn floor, just like always. And the silence, the heavy, suffocating silence, reminded me exactly why I had left in the first place. It was wild how one night of being seen could make you realize how invisible you'd been for years. I showered, washed the scent of Tay's cologne off my skin, but somehow it lingered. Not the smell, but the feeling, the soft, the safe, the feeling of being wanted. I wasn't falling for Tay. I wasn't falling for any of them. I was falling for the version of myself I got to be when Jay wasn't around. And that version, she was hungry, curious, awake. Dream texted me the next morning like she had a direct line to my subconscious. You ready for the next assignment? I rolled my eyes, smiling despite everything. Assignment. That's exactly what this was. A mission to remember who the hell I was before survival replaced my personality. Who is it this time? I asked, half joking, half serious. She sent a photo. Tall, smooth brown skin, clean fade, deep dimples, and a smile that looked like it hid more secrets than a diary. Then she sent the name, Josh. I stared at my screen, realizing I wasn't even shocked. Life had a funny way of throwing mirrors in your face until you finally look. Dream followed with another message. Don't think about your husband. This one is different. Trust me. I leaned back on the bed, clutching my phone, letting the picture stare right into me. Tay had awakened something. Chris had cracked the door, but this new Josh, from the look in his eyes alone, I knew he was going to blow something wide open. And the crazy part, I wasn't scared. Not even a little. because at this point, fear wasn't leading me. The thrill was. I exhaled and typed the only reply that made sense. Set it up. And just like that, I was on to the next man with the same name as the one I married, but had a completely different purpose in my life. So you waited till your 30s to rebel? Josh laughed as he rubbed my feet. We were in his high-rise, sipping champagne after eating at one of the most expensive restaurants in San Francisco. Floor-to-ceiling windows, city lights glowing beneath us, the kind of view that made you forget your problems for a second. I didn't have the chance to do it earlier, I said, puffing the blunt before passing it to him. Met Jay at 15, had my first child at 18. I didn't get to have much of a life. Josh took a slow drag and exhaled like my confession settled in his chest. Damn, he said, brows lifting. I would have fucked that up in the first couple months. How did you last that long? He was talking about my loyalty to Jay, and the question hit harder than I expected. Something in me cracked because I did stay faithful to a man who wasn't loyal to me for years. And hearing it out loud made the ache in my heart throb awake again. Love, I whispered, voice trembling at the truth I never wanted to face. Josh nodded slowly, puffing the blunt, his eyes softening like he understood the whole story without me saying another word. We take a lot of pain just to feel the love of the one who hurts us the most, he said, placing the blunt gently against my lips before returning to my feet. I get it. I'm sorry, I said, blowing my nose. I don't mean to kill the vibe. No more from me, I guess. I pushed the blunt away with a shaky laugh. Don't apologize for being soft, he said. I love being around women. Emotions come with the territory. He passed the blunt back, and even though I didn't take it, the gesture alone felt like comfort. I didn't know how to take his kindness, but I let it sit between us like a warm blanket. So I put my feet back on his lap, and he kept rubbing them like it was nothing. Like my tears didn't scare him. Like my story didn't overwhelm him. Like my broken pieces weren't too sharp for his hands. Once my emotions settled, he put on a movie. But we never watched it. Somewhere between the flashing disco lights bouncing off the walls and the soft rhythm of the soundtrack playing behind us, we ended up on the floor, lost in each other's arms. His touch was strong but steady, his body warm against mine, and the room spun with color and weed smoke and desire. My breath caught with every slow press of his hips, every kiss along my neck, every moment where pleasure spilled into the empty places Jay had left inside of me. I peaked more than once, my pulse racing, my body trembling beneath the weight of something that felt like release and revelation all at once. The smell of weed, the warmth of his rough hands on my neck, the thrill of him inside me. It all blended together until I wasn't just escaping. I was remembering what it felt like to feel alive. But after that night with the other Josh, I told Dream I needed to take a break. The breakdown I had in that man's arms, a man who shared a name with my husband, shook something loose inside me. He was nice about it, kind even. But I didn't know if the next man would be. I wasn't trying to fall apart in front of everybody with a beard and a pose. Any contact I give you might be ready to get it in, but they are all emotionally intelligent, considerate, and cool as hell. Josh wasn't even tripping. He said he wanted to see you again. I know. I sighed, but I didn't like the way it felt. Girl, when you deal with men who like women, like actually like them, it's a whole different experience. Trust me, I'm learning that. I admit it. Even though you said none of them cared what I had to say, most of them did. I'm not used to that either. Dream smirked, flipping her locks over her shoulder. Well, maybe that was how I approached it. And I got the same energy back. But you're different, TT. And I love that about you. And apparently, they do too. Because they all been asking to see you again. She leaned in closer, eyebrows raised, lips curling into that mischievous smile she saved for good tea. And Khalil is dying to meet you still. My heart did a stupid little flutter, the kind I pretended I didn't feel. Dream slid the iPad toward me like she was offering me a contract with the devil, or the love story I didn't know was waiting. He looked kind of like Tay, tall, smooth, handsome, but older, with no tattoos and a softer, wise-looking face. Something about his eyes felt familiar, like He had already seen a version of me I hadn't shown anyone yet. As long as his middle name isn't Josh, I joked, pretending to glance away as I gave my sister the go-ahead. She squealed like she had been waiting her whole life for this moment. And just like that, without realizing it, I said yes to meeting the man I'd eventually fall in love with. Dream's house always smelled like freshly fried chicken, shea butter, and money. The kind of place that made you feel safe enough to laugh, but classy enough to hide your insecurities. She had the music low, good R&B humming through the speakers, and a spread on the table like she was hosting a baby shower for Beyonce. Wings, sliders, fruit trays, tequila lined up like soldiers. Dream did not play when she had company. It was supposed to be a small kickback. But really, it was a setup. Dream's favorite hobby. It was just me, her, one of her male friends, who looked like he sold mortgages and dreams, and then him, Khalil. The moment Dream opened the door for him, the air shifted. He stepped in slow, like he was making sure he had the right house, or the right universe. Tall, smooth brown skin, soft eyes, beard trimmed like he took pride in being fine. He looked exactly like his picture, but better, realer, more felt. He swallowed hard when he looked at me, and I tried my best not to show how that affected me. Dream smirked, catching it immediately. I shot her a look. She ignored it. "Y'all good?" she asked, pretending to be innocent as she poured drinks. Khalil nodded too fast, almost dropped his keys. Yeah, I'm good. I'm straight." But his eyes were all over me, respectfully, like he'd been waiting on this moment longer than he could admit. We all sat in the living room, Dream and her friend on one couch, me and Khalil on the other. My heart was doing that annoying flutter again, and I hated that he could probably feel the heat coming off my skin. Dream passed me my drink and whispered dramatically loud. "So, do you want to know what I told him about you?" I glared. "Dream, don't do this." Khalil chuckled under his breath, low and nervous. "Nah, I kind of want you to hear this too." Rubbing his hands together like he was scared I'd confirm some wild story. Dream grinned like the devil himself. "Relax. I didn't tell him nothing crazy. Just that you're gorgeous, emotional, deep as hell, and a hopeless romantic with a splash of danger." My mouth fell open. "Why would you say all of that?" "Because it's true." Dream shrugged. Khalil's smile softened, shy, almost boyish. He looked at me like he'd just found something rare. "I mean, she wasn't wrong," he said quietly. Dream fanned the air dramatically. He was cheesing hard as hell, girl. Talking about, "Damn, she pretty." She deepened her voice to mock him, which made him hide his face in his hands. Khalil laughed at my sister's impression of him, but his voice cracked just enough for me to know he meant every word. I took a sip of my drink to hide my smile. "So you were nervous?" I asked softly. He looked up at me, eyes steady now. "Still am," he admitted. "You walked in here looking like trouble, the good kind." My breath caught. Dream squealed behind her cup. Her friend chuckled, shaking his head like he just witnessed a moment he wasn't supposed to see. The music shifted to an old school slow jam. The lights dimmed, the kind of way only Dream's house knew how to do. And suddenly the whole room felt like it was watching us. Not loudly, not obviously, but enough. Khalil leaned back, exhaled like he'd been holding his breath since he arrived. "I'm glad you came tonight," he said softly. "Me too," I whispered. Dream caught that whisper and literally kicked my foot under the table like, "Act normal." But it was too late. Something between me and Khalil had already sparked. Quiet, steady, unavoidable. And everyone in that room felt it. I couldn't stop smiling, and neither could he. We talked about everything one could think of that night. He had 2 sons and a turtle. No prior marriages. One really long-term relationship. Both parents deceased. A sister he was really close to, but besides her, he didn't have much family. He grew up bouncing from home to home until he turned 16 and got a job so he could get his own place. That was where he met the mother of his 2 sons. He ran a moving company that was pretty successful, based out of San Francisco, where he also lived with his kids. We connected over the fact that the partners we had kids with were our first and only serious relationships. And coincidentally, they both did us wrong. His former partner had spent the entire relationship cheating and had left when she got pregnant by someone else. Told him he could have the kids they had together because the new man didn't want them. He had been through the ringer with her and still managed not to be bitter about love. And although the story was messy, he spoke of her in a kind manner, like he understood her wounds were what got in the way, not like she was the monster she sounded like. And I like that. Most men who got burned in love had a hardness in their eyes, a resistance to opening up again, but I didn't see that in him. I saw a man who had been hurt, but was still open to love. I was hesitant to get involved with him, though, because Jay and I were still legally married, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to leave or if I just wanted to get Jay back. I didn't want to hurt him any more than he had already been hurt. He understood that, thanked me for being honest, and offered to start with friendship. I accepted, because he was the first man I felt like I could actually be friends with. Dream and her friend had been in the back having an adult situation in her bedroom for a long time. She was surprised to see us still sitting on the couch, very cozy, chatting the night away. "Y'all still talking?" she asked, scratching her head as she closed her robe and sat down. "What a waste of a good night," she said playfully, slapping Khalil on the knee. "Nowhere near a waste," he replied. "Not at all," I added. She sat back, looked at him, then looked at me and smiled like she already knew this could only turn out one way. She nodded as she began gathering cups and bottles. "Well, I hope you two have fun, but don't hurt my sister or I'm going to have to cut you," she joked, only half joking, before heading back to her room. The sound of her slippers scraped down the hallway as the lights clicked off. "Make sure you lock up before you leave, T," she called. Then her door closed. Khalil offered to walk me to my car, but I told him I was spending the night. The nanny and Jay had the kids, and I didn't feel like pretending with my husband tonight. For once, I just wanted to be me. So I walked Khalil out to his car, locked the door behind him, and crawled into Dream's plush guest bed, my mind louder than the house had just been. The next morning, I woke up to Jay banging on my sister's door like the damn cops. Dream and her friend rushed from the back, concerned and ready. Dream held her gun close while her friend went to open the door. "Can I help you?" he asked through the cracked door. "Who the fuck are you?" Jay growled as he tried forcing it open. But Dream's friend had a firm grip and didn't let the door move, not even an inch. I heard that long inhale, the one with no exhale, the one that always came before somebody, usually me, got hurt. But his voice stayed controlled. "I'm looking for my wife," he said forcefully, trying to nudge the door open again. Her friend refused to budge. He looked to Dream for permission, and she nodded. He opened the door, and Jay gave him an unfriendly stare down as he stepped inside and walked toward my sister. Dream lifted her gun and aimed it straight at his chest with a cold look. "Tell me why you don't know where my sister is, Jay," she said, pressing the gun into his body. I watched through the crack in the guest room door across from the living room. Jay gave her that cheesy, fake smile, pretending to be that sweet boy he hadn't been in a long time. "She said she was going to dinner with you and a friend," he said calmly. "And what happened last month?" she asked, referencing the day I came to her house crying after finding out Jay had a baby with Janine. "We got into a fight," he lied, way too smoothly. She wasn't having it. She pressed the gun deeper into his chest and leaned closer to his face. "Be careful how you treat my family. You're not the only crazy person in her life with a gun," she said, tapping the side of his head with the gun before lowering it. "We go way back, Dream. I don't want no trouble with you. I'm just trying to find my wife," he said, backing up. "I can't help you with that," she replied, signaling him to the door. "I told you Dream did not play about me, and I knew she was going to make him pay for what he'd done to me." "I got you," he said, walking out. I was shocked that he gave in so easily. He'd been terrorizing me for years, so seeing him back down from Dream made me giggle a little. Once he left, Dream came into the room where I was hiding and told me what happened. I pretended I didn't see anything, said I was sleeping off a hangover from last night, but I enjoyed that show more than she knew. "Just be careful when you go back," she said. "Tell him you were laid up in the back and you didn't feel good." I left my sister's house and rehearsed my lie the whole drive, just like she told me to. When I got there, Jay was in the bedroom, waiting. I arrived home around 2 hours after the incident with Dream. I walked through the door and met Jay in the bedroom, and that's when I realized I was walking straight back into the fire. When I walked into the bedroom, Jay was sitting at the edge of the bed with his elbows on his knees, head down, quiet. Too quiet. That was always worse than yelling. "Where you been?" he asked without looking up. I slipped my shoes off slowly. "Dreams," I said. "I told you that." "You told me you was going to dinner," he said flatly. "You ain't tell me you wasn't coming home." I fell asleep. I didn't feel good. He finally looked at me then. His eyes were thin, calculating, silent, like he was stacking weapons in his head. "You ain't called me once," he said. "All night." I shrugged. "My phone died." That's when he smiled. A slow, crooked smile that made my stomach drop. "It's crazy," he said calmly. "How you only disappear when you trying to be seen by somebody else." My chest tightened. "I wasn't with nobody." "That's funny," he said, standing up now, "because everything in me says you was." I tried to step around him toward the dresser, but he shifted and blocked my path. "I had to make a decision while you was gone," he continued. My heart started racing. "What decision?" He tilted his head, like he was thinking about it all over again. "I dropped the kids off at my parents' house this morning." Relief hit me first, until he kept talking. "I told them you been running the streets, acting like you don't got no responsibilities. Told them you ain't been acting like no mother." My throat dried instantly. "They don't even know where you been at," he said. "So I let them step in." My hand shook. "What do you mean, step in?" "I mean, I gave them the kids," he said. "Full time. For now." The room tilted. "You what?" I whispered. "You heard me." I reached for my phone without thinking. He slapped it out of my hand so hard it hit the wall and cracked. The sound echoed through the room like a gunshot. "You're not calling nobody," he warned. "Not right now." My hands trembled at my side. "Jay, please don't do this. I didn't do nothing to those kids." "You did something to me," he snapped quietly. "And when you do that, you forget. I don't just punish you." He stepped closer. "I punish everything you love, too." My knees felt weak. "You think I don't see you pulling away?" he continued. "You think I don't feel you leaving me right in my face?" "I'm still here," I whispered. "Yeah," he said, "but your mind ain't." Silence fell heavy between us. "I can undo it," he said finally. "All of it." My chest heaved. "Undo what?" "I can bring them back," he said. "Right now." Hope surged through me so fast it made me dizzy. "Please." "Yes, please." His eyes locked into mine. "But you gotta act like you want your family." I swallowed hard. "And you gotta stop disappearing," he continued. "Stop acting like you got somewhere better to be." I nodded slowly. "And you gotta come lay down with your husband," he finished. My stomach churned. Now, every part of me shrank inward. I hated him in that moment more than I ever had. But the thought of my babies, confused, scared, thinking their mama didn't want them, it broke me open. So I complied. Not because I wanted to, but because I had no choice. And as I laid there beside him, stiff and silent, staring at the ceiling while he held me like he owned me, I realized something dangerous had finally snapped inside of me. Not fear, not love, resentment. And resentment is what turns a woman truly reckless. After that night, I straightened up fast. Too fast. Jay watched every move I made like I was a loose thread in his favorite sweater. So I complied harder. Cooked more, smiled more, stayed home more. Answered every call, every text. And when Dream called me the first time after that night, I lied. "I can't come out no more," I told her, my voice low and rushed. "I gotta chill." She was quiet on the other end for a second. "Why you sound like you're whispering?" she asked. "I'm just tired," I said too quick. "I'm done with the dates for now. I just need peace." She didn't buy it. "You don't sound peaceful, TT," she said. "I'm fine," I lied again. "I'll call you later." But I didn't. For days. I told myself I could handle it, that I'd stay quiet, stay smart, stay alive. I straightened up, played my role, answered his calls, smiled like nothing was wrong. I dodged her calls like they were police sirens. I texted excuses, fell asleep early, stayed busy, everything but the truth. And then there was a knock at the door. Not soft, not polite, purposeful. I opened it, and Dream stood there, eyes sharp, scanning the room. I froze when I saw her through the window. She walked in like she owned the place. No fear and no hesitation. Just straight through the front door with that I don't play about my sister energy. Where is he? She asked. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Dream? I said as I stood in front of my sister, waving my hands, trying to pull her out of attack mode. The look on her face and the sound of her voice snapped me straight back to the day she confronted our daddy. It felt like I was staring at two versions of her at once. The grown woman standing in front of me now, and the tiny 10-year-old girl she used to be. The one who learned too early how to protect innocence with violence if she had to. The one who would kill anyone who dared threaten her sister again. Her breathing was jagged. She was sweating slightly, her forehead shimmering under the roof lighting. I grabbed her hand and sat her down, trying to reassure her that I was fine, that even though he had hurt me, I was okay. My sister still had nightmares about what Daddy did to us. She told me every now and then. I think not hearing from me mixed with those dreams had sent her spiraling. So now it was my turn to save her, the way she had saved me so many times before. Dream, have you been having nightmares again? I asked softly as I sat her down, patting her head with the rag I kept in my pocket. Her eyes filled with tears as she stared off into the distance, but she didn't speak. He's not in our lives anymore, Dream, I whispered, careful not to let Jay hear me. He died years ago. We're safe now. Are we? She asked, tears finally spilling over. I'm numb most of the time. I can't feel anything but sadness and hate. You were in an abusive relationship for years, and now my nieces and nephews are stuck with a father worse than the one we had. No, I said quickly. We would never let that happen to them. Has it already? She shot back. Was what they saw any better? I dropped my head to hide the tears. She was right. I carried so much shame about what I let my kids witness. But back then, I didn't know any better. These past few days, my mind has been going crazy, she continued. Ever since you told me how he violated you, I can't stop worrying. I feel guilty for making you go back. I want you and the kids to live with me. I won't sleep until I know you're safe. He won't let that happen, Dream, I said quietly as I stood up from the couch. And you know it. Who cares what he lets happen? She snapped. You're not safe here, sis. I couldn't argue with her. She was right, but I still couldn't leave. If I tried, he'd come for my kids. He'd come for me, and I'd never know peace. At least here, there would be days of quiet. Come live with me, she pleaded, grabbing my hand as her tears fell faster. Now, why would she do something like that? Jay's voice slid into the room as he walked in from the bedroom, calm, hands resting easily at his sides. Dream turned slowly, her eyes burning through him with pure fury. Their eyes locked as they simmered in a silent standoff. First, you hold a gun to my chest, he said evenly. Now you're telling my wife to take my kids and live with you? I'm starting to think you're obsessed with my wife. Your wife is my sister, Dream shot back, stepping closer, the tension rising fast. And it's my job to protect her from people like you. Didn't you leave her to be taken advantage of? He said calmly, his voice laced with venom. Just so you could hoe in another city? Dream froze, just for a second, recalculating. Jay never dropped his mask in front of her. He always played the good man, the caring husband. But in that moment, she saw it, heard it, the quiet, scorching evil beneath his calm. Tell him what you want for your birthday this year, Titi, she said without breaking eye contact with him. I looked at her, unsure of the plan she was cooking, but very aware that there was one. She wants to go to a sex club, Dream said, taking my hand. She was scared to tell you, and now I see why. That's why you want my wife to come live with you? He asked, unconvinced, but curious where she was headed. Well, my sister has been in a relationship with you since she was a teen, Jay, Dream said smoothly. She wants to experiment. And I mean, you know the lure of variety. You've been sleeping around for years, haven't you? Jay flashed a sly grin but said nothing. He brushed the embarrassment off with a swipe of his nose, hand slipping into his pocket. She should be able to experience something new, Dream continued, feigning concern. Otherwise she'll stray and eventually leave you for good, and we both know you don't want that. Something shifted in his face. The reality of what she was saying settled in, even as the sting of her words lingered. He knew she was right. Hell, I had already been experimenting. He just didn't know it. Just one man, Dream said, stepping even closer. One time. That's not going to hurt a confident, strong man like you, is it? Jay's jaw clenched. And if she could handle all that pain behind her back, Dream continued, her voice shaking with rage, you can handle her smashing one man in your face. Dream, you wildin', he muttered, but his voice didn't have the same confidence it usually did. You felt her slipping away, didn't you? She pressed. What if I told you this is the only way you get her back? For the first time, something cracked in him. He looked at me then, really looked, not as his wife, not as something he owned, but like he was finally seeing the distance between us. Is that what you want? He asked. I had never told Dream that part, but my sister already had a plan, and in that moment I trusted her more than I trusted the man I married. Yes, I said, my voice steady, even though fear crawled up my spine. He looked around the room like he was negotiating with himself. His eyes went thin, his head swaying slightly, like he was having a conversation no one else could hear. Finally, he exhaled. One man, he said, and he gotta be random. No exes, no crushes, no history. Dream turned to me with a wink, flashing that devilish grin, oddly laced with protection this time. This wasn't just about sex. This was about power. And whatever she had planned, I already knew. This was about to be the dirtiest, messiest get back scheme he'd never see coming. In the hallway, she grabbed my arm gently. First, he disrespects my sister. Then, he disrespects me to my face. She said low, okay. He wants to play dirty. We'll play dirty. Dream, what the heck was that back there? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm going to help you give Jay a taste of his own damn medicine, she said, opening her car door. One last thing, she whispered. Call Khalil. That man actually likes you. I hesitated. And don't forget the plan, she warned. You stay long enough to get your shit together, not long enough to lose yourself again. She looked me dead in the eye. Don't let him pull you back in. I never told Dream that he threatened to take my kids that day. I was just grateful my sister came to my rescue, like only Dream ever could. That night, after Jay fell asleep, I pulled my phone out from under the pillow. My hand shook as I typed. You still want to take me out? The reply came fast. Always. So, we booked a date. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't running. Khalil brought a satisfying essence of calm and intention to the date planning. The time, the restaurant, the vibe. He liked me a lot, and it showed. I wasn't used to that. It wasn't loud. and it wasn't flashy. It was warm, low lights, soft music, the kind of place where conversations lingered instead of competing with the noise. When I walked in, he stood up immediately, smoothing his jacket like he'd rehearsed the moment. He smiled when he saw me, and that made my chest flutter. "You look beautiful tonight," he said, his voice a little softer than I expected. "Thank you, handsome," I smiled. He laughed quietly, rubbing the back of his neck as he pulled my chair out. "I've been thinking about this all day," he admitted. "You mean all week," I said with a flirty smile. He had told me every day since last week that he was excited to see me again, so I knew all day was just a front. He smiled and even blushed. "Can you blame me?" he said, flashing that beautiful smile and giving me that lustful stare I enjoyed so much. Maybe a little too much for a married woman. I smiled and dropped my head, trying to hide the shy, schoolgirl grin spreading across my face. I was flattered, and it showed. "I really like talking to you, Charity, and that's hard to come by for me," he said, leaning forward and holding my hand. The way we held eye contact felt like we were holding each other's vulnerability. "The feeling is mutual, okay?" I said softly. "I'm okay now?" he asked, leaning back slightly. "I hope that's a good thing." "It's a really good thing," I replied, leaning closer and tracing his fingers with mine. Flirtatious, but careful. I start using nicknames as a marker in my brain for the people I care about. Hmm, he hummed, something clicking in his expression. "So I'm someone you care about," he said as he tilted his hand, inviting me to trace his forearm. "I'm starting to," I replied as my finger slipped just beneath the edge of his sleeve. "Can you blame me?" I teased, mimicking his words from earlier, just to see that boyish smile break across his face again. The eye contact between us deepened, felt heavier as I traced the veins on his forearm. The connection wasn't rushed, just deliberate, like we were learning the language of each other's presence. "What are you doing to me?" he asked quietly, gesturing toward my hand, toward the space between us that felt charged. "I'm introducing you to my softer side," I said, leaning in just a little more. "And what did I do to deserve that?" he asked, meeting me halfway. "Just by being you," I said, simply and truly. The waitress cleared her throat, waiting for us to come back down to earth so she could set our plates on the table. It had gotten so heavy we'd forgotten we even ordered food. Honestly, I wanted to pack it up to go just so we could take this to the next level, but I stayed a lady. We leaned back and let the moment cool as the plates were placed between us. Once the food came, conversation flowed easily. We talked about his kids, my kids, the small things that somehow felt big. He listened when I spoke. He didn't interrupt, and he didn't rush to fill the silence. He let it exist. After dinner, we walked. The city hummed around us, but the night felt private. Our shoulders brushed occasionally, never forced, never accidental, the kind of closeness that didn't demand anything. "I don't want you to think I expect anything," he said suddenly, stopping near the water. "I know you've got a lot going on." I exhaled. "Thank you for understanding." He looked at me with something hopeful in his eyes, hope wrapped in patience. "Yeah, I'm not in a rush," he said. "We can be friends first, or just talk. I'll go as slow as you want." My throat tightened. "I appreciate that." I said, even though part of me wanted to rush, to lean into the warmth of him and let it melt away the damage Jay had done. But I wasn't the type to play with someone's feelings. I don't know where this is going yet, but I promise to be transparent, at least where we are concerned. I appreciate that too, he said gently. When we reached my car, he turned to me with that same intense but genuine look, the kind that made the connection feel real, not imagined. My only intention, he said carefully, is to get to know you. I shook my head, squeezed his hand, and stepped back, creating space to cool the heat. The honesty in his voice scared me more than danger ever had. We stood there for a moment, city lights reflecting off the water, my heart beating louder than the traffic. The feeling is mutual, I said, kissing him on the cheek before getting into my car. I drove home in a haze. I had been out of love for so long, I had forgotten the high it could give you, the excitement, the hope, the calm, the feeling of being somebody again, of being the one who makes someone's heart flutter, the innocent curiosity about how they spend their days and their nights, the quiet comfort of knowing they feel the same way too. I thought I was safe from falling in love, protected by the tangled, shredded mess my heart had become. But being around Khalil, just his presence, made my heart feel whole again, made me come alive in love in a way I never knew I could, made the hurt not hurt, if only for a little while. I got lost in my thoughts as cool air spilled in through the window and the freeway stretched out in front of me. That's when the reality of my marriage settled back in, heavy and unavoidable, as my ring caught the moonlight and sparkled on my hand. I loosened my grip on the steering wheel, slipped the ring off, and held it for a moment longer than I should have. Then I rolled the window down and tossed it out into the night, along with the last small piece of love I still had for Jay. He would never have my heart again. I know you're probably judging me right now. You think Khalil is a rebound, that I should stay with my husband. But a husband is supposed to protect you, love you, make you feel safe and seen. I spent the better part of my life being a wife to a man who never learned how to be a husband. He didn't see the parts of me that mattered. He wanted me, but only on his terms, on his time, and in places no woman should ever exist in a man's mind. And I don't know much about love, but I know it shouldn't hurt this much. It shouldn't make you this afraid. I wanted to be in love, and if I could have that, I was willing to take it at any cost. Dream's name popped up on my phone as I exited the freeway. You got that man sprung, and he ain't even hit yet, she said, giggling like a teenager. You talked to him already? I asked, shocked. We had just left each other. He called me, she said. Couldn't stop talking about you. I leaned back in my seat and bit my lip, thinking about the musky warmth of his cologne, the kindness in his eyes, the sensation of his skin under my finger. I really liked him too. I admitted, my body reacting before my mind could stop it. Y'all are so cute together, Dream said. But I hesitated as I pulled up to my house, the one I shared with the devil. But what? She asked, her tone shifting. I think I like him too much, I said quietly. My sister exhaled, like she already knew where this was headed. I am still married, Dream. We gonna take care of that, she said calmly. Just stick to the plan and give Khalil a chance. That man really likes you. I exhaled to reset the moment as it got heavy with the mention of my marriage. As I let my sister's reassurance settle in. Did you find a sex club you like yet? She asked. No, Dream. Jay didn't mean what he told you. She paused, You ever wonder why he puts on an act every time you try to leave? Just to pull you back in? Because he's evil, I said flatly. Because he knows he'll never find another woman like you, she replied. But you gotta start standing on business. Make him believe he'll lose you if he refuses to meet you where you are. That won't work. Yes, it will, she said. It already has. Trust me. I don't want to sleep with no sex club weirdo, I said, half laughing, half serious. Oh, never that, she replied. That's why I introduced you to Khalil. That's his specialty. Sex clubs? I asked. I didn't take him for that type. At night, he's a male dom, she said casually. Gets paid to boss women around in front of their husband. But you, he's willing to go further with. You already told him? I said, covering my eyes as embarrassment crept up my spine. Khalil's words echoed in my head. The way he'd said, I know you got a lot going on. The way my heart skipped when he said it. She told him everything, and he still wanted to be involved? My thoughts spiraled. The calm, floating feeling from earlier disappeared as my sister kept talking, trying to convince me that bringing the man I was falling for into a sex club to make my husband jealous wouldn't be messy. She called it liberating, but all I could feel was the weight of what I was stepping into. Love on one side, danger on the other, and me standing right in the middle, about to choose anyway. I needed a reset, something to take the edge off. So I went back to the free pad and found a hot guy named Tats. I thought Tay was wildly tatted, but Tats was wickedly tatted. Ink everywhere, like his skin told stories before his mouth ever could. He had the body of a god and the intellect of Steve Jobs, but something about him felt off. We met at a cute little park in the city, had a picnic, talked, walked, listened to music. On paper, it was perfect. In reality, I was forcing myself to stay present, forcing myself to smile, forcing myself to feel something that just wasn't there. So, I did what I hadn't done before. I pushed myself to pretend. I thought maybe if I got to the intimacy, I could escape into it the way I had with the other. I thought I could disappear inside the moment and forget everything else, but I couldn't. For the first time in my life, I had to fake it. And to be fair, it wasn't his fault. He was doing everything right. He was soft, clear, inviting. He made space for me. I just didn't feel the click. And I couldn't even name what was missing. Only that something was. Something important. I told myself it was a fluke. So I went on another date. This time with Chris again. I thought surely it would feel just as exciting, just as reckless as before. But it didn't. We went to a beautiful waterfront lounge, had drinks, then drove to a city overlook and got close, if you know what I mean. But I couldn't feel anything. It wasn't pleasure, it was pressure, motion without sensation. When we were done, we talked, like we always did, about the stars, the moon, astrology. But my mind wasn't there. My body wasn't there. All I could think about was him. And that's when it hit me. That's why I couldn't enjoy another man's company. The feeling of falling for Khalil had fully grown, no longer a spark or a thrill, but a soft, undeniable landing right on top of love. I leaned my head back and muttered, fuck, right in the middle of Chris's sentence, realizing this man had my whole heart in a chokehold. Chris paused, then looked at me like he already knew. Might as well give him a chance, he said quietly. I stared at him, confused, unsure whether to deny it or admit what my body had already accepted. that my heart had made its choice long before I was ready to say it out loud. "It's not working anymore," I said, pacing my sister's closet while she got dressed for one of her dates. "You're overthinking this," she replied, carefully putting on her lipstick, eyes focused on the lines of her lips. "I knew this was a bad idea," I said, planting myself on the tufted bench in the corner. "Ugh!" I screamed out of frustration, anxiety mixed with a little bit of excitement. "Okay," she said, stopping mid-swipe and coming over to calm me down. "Y'all both like each other. Why push him away? It's been almost 3 weeks since you talked to him. He thinks he did something wrong, girl." "He didn't," I said. "I did. Why did I even start this?" "You asking the wrong questions," she said, grabbing her phone and showing me the text messages and missed calls from Khalil. I felt bad. I really did. But I needed time to sort through my own emotions before I could even think about anyone else's. I pushed the phone away and dropped my head into my lap. Dream stepped closer, placed her hands under my chin, and forced me to look her in the eyes. "You can enjoy the messy parts too, TT," she said softly. "Everything doesn't have to be neat and clean. This is your life, boo. Do the thing that makes you happy." That hit me harder than she knew, because doing the right thing got me married to the wrong man. So maybe I don't want to be a good girl anymore. I want to be reckless. I want to be messy. I want to feel again. I spent my whole life being the one who sat in the corner, thought through every move, tried to stay on the right side of karma. So how did I end up in the hospital bed while my evil husband smiled at me from the sidelines? Fuck it. I was going all in. Even if it got messy, I'd enjoy the hell out of it. And Khalil made me feel good. As my sister said, I intended to enjoy the messy part, the sweet, warm, intense mess I already knew Khalil and I were capable of making together. Did I say I fell for Khalil? Because it wasn't a fall, it was a dive. One I tried to resist, one I fully welcomed, one I planned for, even while pretending I didn't. I submerged myself in that man's warmth, and he did the same for me. No hesitation, no pretending, just two people choosing to step in deeper than they probably should have. I called him the moment I left my sister's house that day. We met in some random parking lot, nothing special, just asphalt and streetlights, but the conversation felt heavy, important. He told me he wanted to go deeper, but only if I was sure, only if I was ready. And I told him I was. I told him I felt the same way. And just like that, we agreed, without saying it out loud, to enjoy the most romantic and messy 4 months of our lives. It was like a honeymoon without the wedding or the promises. No rules, no pretending, just us. We made love everywhere. His car, my car. Hotels, bathrooms, hiking trails. My house, his house. Anywhere we could steal a moment, we did. The intimacy, the connection, the passion. This man was intoxicating. Every time we made love, it felt like we were writing a hymn with our souls. High peaks, slow melodies, endings that landed somewhere between serenity and divinity. Sacred and sinful at the same time. We couldn't get enough of each other. And the deeper I fell into the raw, honest intimacy we shared, the clearer it became. The only man who could ever make my husband jealous was Khalil. I spotted him the moment we walked in. Khalil had the kind of body most women only fantasize about touching. Over 6'4", broad shoulders that looked like they had been carved just to test my self-control. His skin caught the light like dark silk. Smooth, rich, dangerous. He wasn't bulky. He was just right. The kind of man who didn't need a gym to look good because God had already done the heavy lifting. Standing next to him always made me feel small, delicate even, and I loved that. I peeped him talking to some Kelly Rowland looking chick, her hand on his face, laughing too loud. I gave him a little side smile and kept it moving. I had to stay in character. If this plan worked, Jay couldn't suspect Khalil and I had history before we started. But Lord knows, watching that woman touch him made my blood boil hot enough to cook dinner on my skin. When we got to the suite, the host took our coats and led us into the private lounge. Velvet black curtains framed the view of the club below, gold railings glinting under low lights. I let my locks fall down my back and took a seat in one of the leather chairs, adjusting the lace on my teddy just right. The black fabric hugged me like a whisper. I wanted Khalil to choke on his composure when he saw me. Jay handed me a glass of Prosecco with a splash of mango juice, the way I liked it. "You feeling good?" he asked, with that proud look in his eyes. "I'm feeling great, baby. Thank you for my birthday gift," I said, smiling as I took a sip. "Whatever my baby wants, I make it happen," he said, kissing my lips and giving my backside a smack a little harder than usual. I flinched, but turned it into a laugh. "See anybody you like?" he asked, and right on cue, Khalil appeared. "Can I join you?" His voice hit the room low and steady, eyes locked on mine even as he spoke to Jay. My husband sized him up, trying not to show the shift in the air. "Whatever makes my wife happy," Jay said, using that fake calm men use when they feel threatened. I leaned back against the rail, the cool metal pressing into my back, tilting my head as a slow smile curved my lips. I lifted my finger and motioned for Khalil to come closer. He moved the way confidence moves, unhurried, deliberate, like the space already belonged to him. When his hands reached my waist, the noise around us disappeared. With one smooth motion, he lifted me and settled me onto the rail, my balance resting entirely in his grip. The height made my breath catch. The danger made my pulse race. My legs instinctively tightened around his hips as he stepped in close, his body anchoring mine. One arm braced behind me so I wouldn't fall. I breathed in the warm scent of his cologne, my body responding before my mind could catch up. He leaned in and murmured something low in my ear, something meant only for me. My knees forgot their job. My thoughts tangled. The crowd below blurred into light and sound. From the corner of my eye, I caught Jay watching, jaw clenched, eyes dark, chest rising too fast. And I didn't look away. I wanted him to see it. Wanted him to understand that right there, with my body balanced on the rail held steady by another man, control had already slipped through his fingers. And in that moment, suspended between height and heat, danger and desire, I realized just how close pleasure can sit to punishment. Jay watched our intimate performance through tight eyes. His fist balled so hard the veins in his forearms looked ready to burst. He didn't blink, didn't look away, just stared, jaw clenched, lips pressed thin like he was swallowing something poisonous. The tension in the room was thick enough to taste. Khalil kept me right where I was, balanced on the railing, my back resting against the cool metal, my body held in place by his strength alone. One arm braced behind me, the other firm at my waist, steady and intentional. Like he wanted to make it clear to everyone watching that he had a firm grip, even while doing his thing. "You good up there?" Khalil murmured, voice low enough to sound private, loud enough to be heard. And I nodded, breath uneven. "I'm good." He smiled slowly, the kind of smile that wasn't friendly. It was deliberate. "I got you," he said, eyes never leaving mine. His hand slid just enough to remind me how much control he had, how easily he could move me, hold me, decide what happened next. My pulse thudded loud in my ears. From behind him, Jay shifted in his seat, and Khalil noticed. Of course he did. "You like the way I feel, don't you?" Khalil asked me, louder this time, clear enough for the whole room to hear. "Yes," I moaned, my voice unsteady as my body felt like it was buzzing. "Say it again," he said, tilting his head slightly, eyes flicking just once toward Jay before returning to me. I want him to hear it. "I love the way you feel," I repeated. He leaned in closer, his mouth near my ear now, his voice dropping back into something intimate. "Just remember to breathe, baby." Jay's fingers tightened around his glass. Khalil's thumb traced a slow, deliberate line along my side. Not enough to cross a line, but enough to have no doubt about intention. "You look good in this," he said calmly. "Real good." My breath caught, and the room felt smaller, hotter. Khalil shifted his stance just slightly, keeping me centered on the rail, his body blocking and framing me at the same time. He turned his head enough to address Jay without fully looking at him. "You all right over there?" he asked, polite, almost respectful. Jay lifted his glass, taking a slow sip to buy himself time. "I'm fine," he said evenly. Khalil nodded, like he accepted that answer, even though everyone knew it was a lie. Then he turned back to me and pressed his forehead briefly against mine. Not a kiss, something worse. Something intimate enough to feel like a violation without technically being one. "You ready to finish?" he asked quietly. I swallowed. "Yeah." That was when Jay stood. The chair scraped loudly against the floor, the sound sharp and sudden. For a split second, I thought this was it. That this was where everything shattered. But Jay stopped himself. He sat back down slowly, deliberately, picked up his drink with shaking hands, and took another sip, eyes never leaving us. Khalil smiled again, smaller this time, satisfied. When it was over, the air shifted. Khalil eased me down from the railing, adjusted his clothes like this was just another night, then turned to Jay and gave him a nod that landed somewhere between respect and challenge. And then he walked out, like nothing had happened. My husband leaned forward, set his drink on the table, and clapped, slow, deliberate, loud enough to echo across the room. The sound hit harder than any slap ever could. I pulled my lace back into place, finished my drink with hands that barely felt like mine, and waited for the explosion that didn't come. Jay stood, picked up my coat, and tossed it at me. "Let's go," he said. His voice was calm, too calm. Outside, the air was sharp and cold. Jay didn't yell, didn't slam the door, and he didn't need to. His silence said more than words ever could. Once we got into the car, he opened my door, closed it firmly, and walked around to his side. But the moment the engine roared to life, I could feel the storm rising. He was speeding, fast, taking corners like the laws of physics didn't apply. Red lights, curves, narrow streets. San Francisco slept while we tore through it like a secret nobody wanted to keep. Halfway home, his voice finally broke the silence. "Did you know that nigga?" he asked, smooth, unbothered. I turned toward him, keeping my face calm. "Why would you ask me that?" He smirked, still watching the road. "You think you slick. He called you T, more than once." My body tensed. "I don't know. Maybe you misheard him," I lied. His hands tightened on the wheel. "You know I don't like to share," he said, gripping the wheel even tighter. There was a rage I kept for Jay's disrespect, cheating, and lying. And in that moment, it came to life. How dare he say something like that to me after all he had put me through? And before my mind could think about the repercussions, my mouth yelled out, "Neither do I, nigga." That was all it took. The car jerked to a stop in the middle of the freeway. My head snapped forward, locks swinging into my face. He turned toward me, eyes dark, the quiet kind of rage that doesn't shout. It haunts. He grabbed my chin, fingers rough and sharp. "If I find out y'all been seeing each other outside of this situation, y'all both be dead. Know this." His breath was hot and his words cutting. "You get me?" he said, shaking my face. I closed my eyes, refusing to give him the satisfaction of fear. "Do you get me?" he barked, louder now. The pressure on my jaw made my bones scream. "Yes," I whispered, defiant. "Nah, I can't hear you." "Yes," I shouted, and he pushed my head back so hard it hit the glass, and everything went dark. I woke up in our bed with a bloody rag pressed to the side of my head, and Jay knocked out next to me, still wearing the same clothes from the velvet room. For a second, I just laid there, still, confused, trying to piece together how the night ended, and why my head felt like it had been slammed on concrete. I pushed myself up, slowly, and the moment I sat upright, the room spun and I lost my footing. I grabbed the edge of the bed to steady myself, breathing through it. I couldn't remember when we got home, couldn't remember getting out the car, couldn't remember anything after, but something in me already knew. I just wasn't ready to say it out loud yet. I made my way into the bathroom, one careful step at a time, like my feet didn't trust the ground beneath me. The light was too bright when I flipped it on, too harsh for what I was about to see. My hands trembled as I pulled the rag away from my head. Blood, too much blood. My stomach dropped. I climbed onto the counter, bracing myself on the sink, and bent forward to look into the mirror. It took me a second to find it through my locks, but when I did, I froze. It wasn't deep, but it was long. Long enough to leave a story behind. Long enough that it couldn't be explained away with a simple lie. "I'm gonna need stitches," I whispered to myself, my voice barely there. And just like that, reality set in. This wasn't something I could hide. Not from the doctors. Not from my sister. Not from my kids. Not from him, either. I sat back on the counter, letting my head rest against the mirror, my body going weak as the tears finally came. Hot, quiet, heavy. "Was it even worth it?" I whispered. I knew what I signed up for. I knew he'd be angry. I knew he'd get violent. But this felt like something else. Something darker. Something closer to the edge. My fingers hovered near the cut but didn't touch it. And then it hit me. I couldn't see Khalil anymore. Not after this. Jay said he'd kill him if he ever found out we knew each other before that night. And Jay wasn't the kind of man who made empty threats. That night got to him exactly how I thought it would. Made him face his own sin. Snatched the control right out of his hands and placed it in another man's. And that made him snap. Just the sight of Khalil after what we did that night could send him over the edge. Make him do something he might not be able to come back from. Crazy how the man who made a fool of me so many times couldn't even stomach the thought of sharing me once. How could someone so evil be so fragile at the same damn time? I watched him through tight eyes as he tossed and turned in the bed, not too many times before realizing I wasn't next to him. He looked around the room until his dark, evil eyes met mine as I sat on the sink, eyes filled with tears, bloody rag in my hand, and shame all over my face for him to judge. He walked over to me boldly and took the rag to press on my wound. Performative. "You gotta apply pressure, baby. Wouldn't want you to bleed out," he said with that smug look on his face. I held the rag so he would move his hand and lowered my head to break the contact. "You bumped your head pretty good on the ride home. Think you had a little too much to drink," he said, leaning against the wall across from me. I looked up at him in confusion. Did he really think I forgot what he did to me? Should I play along? Should I call him out? Did he forget? We were leaving the club and you bumped your head on your way into the car, he said, further explaining the lie. Why didn't you take me to the hospital? I asked, tears falling fast. Because I figured you'd want a little rest after that exhausting performance at the club with your little friend, he replied, even more smug now. I looked at him, shaking my head, an unspoken, uncomfortable battle happening. I knew he was lying. He knew I knew he was lying, but he dared me to challenge him. And after the large wound I had on my head from what happened earlier, it'd be smart of me to not push him any further. I just want to make sure I don't have a concussion, I said, hoping he'd have sympathy. I've seen many men get knocked out. You good? You woke up, didn't you? He asked sarcastically. I nodded yes, hoping to end this conversation so I could lie down again. My head was spinning and aching all at once. I stood to leave, but felt the room shift and everything went dark again. Next thing I remember was waking up in the hospital. The doctors talking to Dream and Jay, telling them I'll be fine and that stitches will dissolve on their own. Dream had a look of guilt and concern on her face, eyes soaked with tears as she locked eyes with me. Jay was holding her, pretending to be the caring husband consoling my sister. Dream played along for the doctors, but I could tell her skin was crawling just having him stand next to her. How long until we can take her home? Jay asked, fit concern in his voice. We will need to observe her for the night. She can be picked up in the morning, the doctor replied. He took Jay out the room to sign papers, and that's when Dream rushed to me, crying and begging me to come with her. You will not stay with this monster, she whispered. I can't leave yet, I said to her, eyes refusing eye contact, too embarrassed. Charity, I can't lose you, she whispered, getting even closer. We knew he'd get violent, Dream. Part of this is our fault, I said, almost like I wasn't afraid of it myself. But this is dangerous. You need to come stay with me. If I leave now, he'll make it worse. I can't leave. Not now, I said firmly, locking eyes with her, and she nodded her head like she understood, but didn't really want to. The next day, I asked Khalil to meet me at the same parking lot where we met back when we made it official. I sat in my car until I saw him get out of his and stand in the same spot we talked last time. He had no idea what was about to happen. I talked myself out of it at least 3 times, opened my door to leave, then sat back down, my heart fluttering at the thought of saying what I needed to say. A text came through right as I started my engine. It was Khalil. You here yet? My heart jumped. I still had time to back out. I felt so bad for what I was about to do, but I started this, and I had to finish it. I stepped out of the car, slowly, checking my reflection in the window to make sure the scar was covered. My thick locks fell just right, hiding most of that side of my face. I just couldn't afford any sudden moves. But once I started walking toward him, I hesitated, stopping every few steps until he finally saw me. The moment his eyes landed on my face, everything shifted. His calm gave way to concern, and I knew what would come next. You good? He asked, like he always did when we met. A simple question, but it always meant more than it sounded like. Sometimes it was his way of asking if I missed him. Sometimes it meant, you on your way? Sometimes it meant he was thinking about me. But today, he was asking if we were good, and the look on his face said he already knew the answer. He grabbed my arm gently and pulled me toward the corner, away from everything else. I knew I had to say it. Clean, clear. Maybe he wouldn't fight it if I didn't give him anything to hold on to. We can't see each other anymore, I said. The words felt weak coming out, like they didn't belong to me. And why not? He asked, confusion all over his face, all in his voice. We just can't, I said even weaker. Did something happen? He asked, lifting my chin, forcing my eyes to meet his. No, but yes, I said, swallowing hard. I don't feel comfortable talking about it, but we need to stop this for now. Okay, he said quickly. We can slow down. I'm fine with that. That almost broke me because he wasn't hearing me. Or maybe he just didn't want to. We can't see each other anymore. I repeated, firmer this time, hands tight at my side. For now? He asked, searching my eyes. I shook my head. Anymore. And that's when I saw it. The shift. Confusion. Hurt. A flash of anger trying to find somewhere to land. I turned away because I couldn't take it. The guilt I was feeling hit louder than the car alarm going off somewhere in the distance. I could feel him behind me, shaking his head, trying to make sense of something that didn't make sense. Hands on his hips, breathing different now. That calm he always carried, it was slipping. You sure? He asked after a moment. Like it took everything in him to say even that much. I stared at anything but him. The sun, the cars passing, the cracks in the pavement, anything to avoid what I was doing. But he didn't let me escape. He stepped in front of me again, made me look at him. You sure? He repeated, eyebrows pulled tight, voice even heavier now. No, the truth slipped out before I could stop it. Then why say that? Because I need time to handle this without worrying about him coming after you too. I'm not somebody you gotta protect, he said, turning my face back toward his. You don't know what you're stepping into if you stay in this, I replied. I don't give a fuck, he said, frustration creeping in. I'm not afraid. I am, I said quietly. For you and for me. You gotta stop letting him do this, he said, a voice firm now. Either you staying in this or you going, but if you stay scared, you'll always find a reason to run. If I leave, he'll have no reason to let me live, I said. And if you leave and he can't find you, then you'll have every reason to live, he shot back. Or is that what you're really afraid of? That stopped me. I looked at him, a little too aware of how right he sounded. But I couldn't go there. Not now. I didn't come to have this conversation, I said, pulling myself back together. I just wanted to give you the courtesy of telling you in person that. I stepped back, took a breath, forced it out. It's over. I grabbed my keys out of my purse and turned toward my car before the tears could fall, before I could change my mind, before I could run back into his arms and undo everything I just did. By the time I got to my car, he was gone, and that hurt more than anything he could have said. I didn't want that. I didn't want to hurt him, but I had to stay focused. I couldn't afford to depend on anyone else to protect me from Jay until I learned how to protect myself. The weight of my decisions weighed on me a lot more than I thought it would. I couldn't eat. I definitely couldn't sleep. And I couldn't look at Jay without the hate seeping out. I got a job just to have an excuse to stay away from home long enough to breathe, to think, to strategize. Took night classes too, filling my schedule so tight that there was barely room for him in it. I had to lean on Dream and Jay's parents to help with the kids since he was always busy. Funny how he always had somewhere to be until I didn't. I started sleeping in the guest room after the night I came home from the hospital. I did not trust him enough to lay next to him. And that made him even madder. He tried not to show it at first, but I could feel it building. I caught him going through my phone one night, standing there like he had a right to it. Like my silence automatically meant another man had taken his place. And he wasn't wrong, but he also wasn't right. Because another man didn't break us. His abuse did. Funny how you and Dream text all day, he said, his tone casual, but his eyes sharp. But your message is clean. No unread, no open threads. I didn't even look at him. Jay, my head is killing me. I just want to rest, I said, pulling my shirt over my head, hoping he'd let it go. He didn't. He stood there, staring at me like he was doing the math in his head and didn't like how the numbers weren't adding up. Like he hadn't lied. Like he hadn't been caught. Like he didn't build this exact type of distance himself. I brushed past him on my way to the guest room where Baby J was already curled up waiting for me. Safe. Peaceful. Everything I wasn't. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. Right in his face. I didn't have the energy to pretend anymore. Didn't have the patience to play the role of a wife to a man who only cared about control. Because that's all this was to him now. Control. And the anger that's building inside of him, That wasn't about love. It was all about the fact that he could feel it slipping. Feel me slipping. I heard one loud bang on the door, hard enough to make the frame shake. Then silence. Then his footsteps walking away. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't flinch. I just climbed into bed, pulled my baby close, and stared at the ceiling. Because even though my plan wasn't fully clear yet, one thing was, my future didn't involve him anymore. I woke up to the smell of bacon, eggs, biscuits, pancakes, breakfast. Someone was cooking a whole meal in my kitchen on a Tuesday morning. I still woke up with headaches from the head injury every day. The medication helped, but the pain was stubborn, lingering, like a reminder I couldn't shake. I sat up slowly, letting my head catch up to my body, and reached to turn on the lamp. That's when I heard the guest room door open. There Jay was, standing in the doorway with a tray, food, juice, my medication lined up neatly on a napkin, a rose, and a card that said, "I'm sorry," on the front. He gestured for me to lean back. I did it without thinking. He walked over, placed the tray gently on my lap, then kneeled beside me like this was something sacred, like I was something sacred. He helped me arrange the food, steadying the plate when my hand shook. Then he picked up the pills and held them out to me, watching me take them, making sure I swallowed. Careful, attentive, gentle in a way that didn't match anything my body remembered. When he finished, he didn't move right away. He just sat there, quiet. His eyes filled slowly, his face softer than I'd seen it in years. All I ever wanted. He started, his voice low, controlled, like he was choosing every word carefully, was to be good enough for you. Someone you'd be proud to call your husband? My chest tightened. I know I ain't been the best man, he continued, his voice cracking just enough to feel real. But I know I can be a better man for you. And if you could just give me a little time to fix myself, I'll never hurt you again. A tear fell, right on cue. I sat there, stuck, confused. Baby Jay stirred beside me, sitting up and reaching for a piece of my bacon, still rubbing sleep from his eyes. Jay smiled softly. Okay. Let's get you your own plate, little man. Let mommy eat in peace. He scooped him up gently, kissed him on the forehead, and walked out like this was normal. Like we were normal. The door closed, and the second it did, fuck! The tray rattled as I slammed it down on the bed, my chest rising and falling too fast. I hated the man he became. The cold, violent, controlling man who put his hands on me. That version of him, I could walk away from, never look back. But this version was too close to the boy I met. And that boy, I never learned how to leave him. I stood there by the bed, staring at that damn card. I'm sorry. 2 words. But they started to echo so loud until it felt like he was standing right behind me, whispering everything I ever wanted him to say, being the man I begged him to be. And suddenly, leaving didn't feel so easy anymore. I sat down slowly and opened the card, and I broke. He wrote about when we met, about how he knew I was the one, about how all he ever wanted was to protect me, but his trauma got in the way. He said he enrolled in therapy, said he'd do whatever it took because he couldn't lose me. And a part of me felt it, every word, because the broken parts of me loved the broken parts of him too much to ever fully heal enough to grow apart. I wiped my face quickly and ran out of the room looking for him. I found him in the kitchen, standing there with baby Jay in his arms, singing that song, the song we made for him when he was in my belly. The one we would sing on quiet nights when the world was asleep and we rocked our newborn in the dark, singing him into peace. The moment I saw it, I broke. Not the ugly, shattered kind of breaking. The kind that feels like something is being put back together. Or maybe something broken just rearranged itself into something that felt whole again. Because I rushed to him, wrapped my arms around him, held on tight, and for a moment, just one dangerous but beautiful moment. I felt like I had him back. I know what you're thinking, but I could tell he actually changed this time. And I didn't just fall back in. I watched him first, studied him, paid attention before handing my heart back over again. But it felt different this time. And honestly, the man he gave me this go-round made me forget all about Khalil. He could actually talk to me. We could have conversations that felt easy, natural, not tense. Not like he'd snap in the middle just because I disagreed with him like before. There was no walking on eggshells, no calculating my tone, no preparing for impact. Just conversation. We even started making love again. And unlike before, he told me he loved me while we did. The intimacy was unlike anything I ever felt before with him. Jay started doing so many things he could never do before. So many things I begged for. So many things I stopped expecting. And now here he was, giving them freely, like it had always been in him. We even started marriage counseling, his idea. That's when I really started to believe. He planned these breakfast dates where we'd eat together in bed, soft music playing, sunlight coming through the curtains, and then we'd go to our sessions and actually talk through things like adults, like partners, like we were building something instead of surviving it. Why should I trust this version of you? I asked one day during our session, my voice steady but my chest wide open. When every other version hurt me, why should I believe this one won't too? He didn't get defensive, didn't shut down, didn't flip it on me. My trauma had me so messed up, I could barely connect to anyone. He said, his voice low and eyes locked on mine. But you're the only woman I ever loved, T. I never meant to hurt you. I promise I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. And there it was again. Those tears, that openness, that version of him I always felt was buried somewhere beneath the chaos. Even our marriage counselor was impressed. She said she never seen an abusive marriage improve so quickly, that she was skeptical at first, but now she was proud of our progress. And hearing that validated everything I wanted to believe. I was getting everything I ever asked for from Jay. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel skeptical. I felt at peace. We started going to church together. He joined the choir, got involved in the men's group. He'd stand in the kitchen in the mornings, cooking breakfast and teaching Baby J hymns like it was second nature. Like this was always the man he was supposed to be. And I'd rush off to work, watching them from the doorway sometimes, feeling something warm settle in my chest. He had even dissolved the family business, and we were living off his father's inheritance at that point. It was more than enough, but I still kept working. I needed something that was mine. I'm gonna miss you, I said one morning, kissing him before heading out the door. I wrapped my arms around his shoulders and pulled his face toward mine, giving him a soft, lingering kiss. No, he said, pulling me back in deeper, his voice playful now. I'm gonna miss you more. His hand slid into my locks, gently massaging the spot that still ached from my injury. Soft, careful, attentive. No, I'll miss you more, I teased, brushing my lips against his. We'll see who miss who more when I get you back in that bed, he said, with a chuckle, giving my backside a playful smack. Now, take your sexy ass to work. I laughed, grabbing my bag and heading out the door. And as I walked to my car, I realized something I hadn't felt in a long time. No fear, no anxiety, no survival, just peace. Or at least, something that felt close enough to it. Life was good. No, life was great. My husband and I were growing in love. My kids were doing great in school. I had a job I loved, and everything was finally falling into place. Even Dream dropped her guard, and that's when I knew it had to be real. He called me to apologize last week, she said one day as we talked on my way home from work. That's definitely not the same man. And I felt overjoyed, because he changed for me. One morning, he kissed me and told me to wear something sexy to work because he had a surprise for me when I got off. So I did as I was told. and he took me to a romantic Italian restaurant all night. He stared at me like he couldn't believe I was all his, and I stared back at him with that same disbelief. Jay was so handsome, so confident. Hadn't noticed it while we were in that dark, tense place, but after the cloud lifted, I found myself enjoying this version of him, the older version. His tattoos had settled into his skin. Gray had taken over his beard now, and instead of the light sprinkles he had just a few years back. And his face, it looked calmer, more peaceful, like life had finally stopped fighting him. "I knew you'd steal my heart and never give it back," he said, kissing my hand as he stared into my eyes. "You say that like you just realized it," I flirted back. "No," he said softly. "I always knew. I just started to embrace it." There was something about the way he said it, soft, sure, like he meant every word. "Okay, soulmates or twin flames?" I asked, referencing our playful conversation earlier that week. "Oh, soulmates, definitely," he said quickly. "But can we be both?" He still sounded a little confused about the whole thing I had tried to explain to him. "Yes and no," I replied, smiling. "Soul flames." "Soul flames," he said awkwardly. We both laughed. "Is that a thing?" he asked, still smiling, still trying. "If it ever was," I said softly, "me and you would be the first." And something shifted in that moment. Something warm. Something real. He grabbed my hand, locking his fingers into mine, and I felt a kind of warmth I hadn't felt before. This man was becoming someone amazing, and for the first time in a long time, I felt proud that I didn't give up on him. I fell asleep before him that night. That had been happening more lately. The peace we found during the day would carry me just far enough to let my body rest, even if my mind still didn't fully trust it. I don't know what time it was when I woke up, but something felt off. Not loud, not obvious, just wrong. I blinked slowly, my head still heavy from sleep, and that's when I noticed. The closet light was on, and Jay was in it, moving, quiet, too quiet. My chest tightened instantly. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice still thick with sleep as I pushed myself up slightly. He turned his head just enough to look at me over his shoulder. "Looking for something," he said, casually, like nothing about this was strange. But it was, because Jay never looked for anything. He knew where everything was, always. That's when I heard it. A buzz, soft but clear. My stomach dropped. The iPad. My mind started racing because the texts, all of them, they came through the iPad first, before my phone. Before I could even think about deleting anything, before I could control it. Another buzz, louder this time. He paused. I could see it in his body. The stillness. He was listening. "Your phone going off?" he asked, his voice calm but focused now. I moved fast, too fast, grabbing my phone off the nightstand like it was the obvious answer. "Yeah," I said, forcing a yawn, trying to make it sound normal. Probably dream. I glanced down at the screen. No notification. But I tapped it anyway, unlocking it like I had something to check. Silence. Then, another buzz. Not from my hand. From the closet. We both heard it. This time, neither of us pretended we didn't. My heart started pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. He stepped out of the closet slowly, eyes on me. Not angry. Not yet. But thinking. Calculating. "That ain't your phone," he said quietly. Not a question. A statement. I swallowed hard, forcing a small laugh like it didn't matter. "It's probably the iPad," I said, shrugging lightly. "You know it's been syncing everything weird sometimes." He didn't respond right away. Just stood there, looking at me, like he was putting together pieces, but hadn't said it out loud. In that silence, that was worse than yelling. "Come to bed," I said softly, patting the space next to me like this was nothing. like he wasn't standing in the middle of a question I didn't want him to ask. Another pause. Then he nodded. Once. Slow. Controlled. Aye, he said. He turned the closet light off, closed the door, and walked back over to the bed. He laid down next to me, his body warm against mine, his breathing steady, too steady. I turned slightly, facing away from him, pretending to settle back into sleep, but I could feel it, that shift, that quiet tension sliding back into the room. He didn't touch me, didn't pull me close like he had been doing lately, just laid there, thinking. And I laid there too, eyes closed, heart racing, knowing that something had just been set in motion, something neither of us said out loud, but both of us felt. And even though the room was quiet again, sleep didn't come back the same, because peace didn't feel like this. The first thing I did was try to get to the closet and get the iPad. I didn't need that thing fucking up what I had going on. But before I could get to it, the house had gotten so crazy I remembered I was supposed to grab it on my way to drop the kids off at school. Just as I went to turn around, my phone rang. A number popped up that looked familiar but wasn't saved. The moment I answered it, I knew the voice. You good? He asked, like he always did. But this time, there was something in his voice I couldn't name. Yes. You? Colder than I meant to be. A pause. Then I met someone. My heart dropped so hard I missed my exit. Why are you telling me this? I asked, pretending my chest didn't just collapse into itself. I'm getting married. That one landed. Deeper. Good for you, I said, fighting the tears that threatened to fall, forcing my voice to stay flat, unaffected. Yeah, I don't know why I'm telling you. Neither do I snapped. Another pause. I guess I hope you be happy for me. But what, Khalil? I asked, bitterness creeping into my tone. I hear you doing well, he said. Figured I'd move on too. Well, affairs rarely ever blossom into real relationships, I said, my anger sharp and tangible now. So I think you did the right thing. He chuckled on the other end. But it wasn't because anything was funny. It was irritation. Take care of yourself, Charity. You too, I said, hanging up before my voice could betray me. I slammed my hand against the steering wheel so hard the horn blared, startling the car in front of me. Fucking asshole. Why did I need to know you're getting married? I yelled, my voice cracking as the tears finally started to push through. Ruined my whole damn day. And then it hit. That ache. The kind that comes from losing something you really hoped you'd never lose. I made a wild U-turn and headed back home. I couldn't function like this. My mind was spinning, my chest tight, my anger gripping the wheel like it had a mind of its own. I was driving reckless. Cutting people off, taking turns too fast, running stop signs. I couldn't get a grip. And I couldn't shake the feeling that he was playing with me. Testing me, trying to see if I'd break, if I'd beg him not to be with someone else. Little did he know, I played mind games with the best of them. And if he thought I was about to shatter over another woman, he had a rude awakening coming. I pulled up to the house hoping, stupidly, for comfort, for a hug, for something familiar. But the moment I parked, I noticed a car in front of the house I didn't recognize. Not in the driveway. Too close to be for any other house. I stepped out and walked toward it. Empty and locked. So I brushed it off. Probably a neighbor's guest who parked wrong. I headed inside, but the second I opened the door, I heard it. Laughter. Something that sounded like singing or music. Voices. The house was spotless. Too clean. Like Jay had been busy. Candles burned somewhere in the back, mixing with a scent that didn't belong to me, didn't belong to us. I walked further in, my steps slower now, quieter. And that's when I realized they weren't singing, they were moaning. Jay and another woman. My chest tightened so fast I thought I might pass out. I rushed toward the door, ready to kick it in, ready to lose my mind. But I stopped right before my foot hit. I couldn't let him know I knew. Not yet. Not like this. So I turned around, walked out, got back in my car, and drove straight to my sister's house. That evil, manipulative, lying, creepy bastard, Dream said, exhaling through aggressive breaths. We should have known this was all a game to get us to put our guards down. I just sat on the couch, shaking my head, frustration and embarrassment washing over me in waves. He definitely fooled me this time. And to do it in your home? Sick as hell, she yelled. What am I gonna do? I asked, staring off into the distance, gripping the wine bottle like it had answers. I had already drunken most of it by myself. No, she said quickly, snatching the bottle from my hand as she sat next to me. See, this is what he wanted. He wanted to throw you off, make you feel lost, unsure of what to do next. But we're not about to let that happen. I am lost, I cried, my voice breaking. I thought this was it. I really thought he changed, Dream. There was no after for me. Tears fell faster now. I actually thought we had grown into versions of ourselves that could last forever. And now I'm sitting here trying to figure out who I even am without him. This hurt felt different, deeper, like something inside me had finally believed and got betrayed for it. Even now, I whispered, shaking my head, I'm sitting here hoping it was some kind of misunderstanding, when I know damn well he just played me like a fool. Dream's expression softened, but her eyes stayed sharp. But there was a plan before he pulled you back in, she said, her voice steady, grounding. And you can still use that plan, Titi. That plan is no good, I said quickly. I'm not her anymore. I need love. I got to feel the version of him I always wanted. And now I'm just supposed to let it go? Titi, listen to me, she said, leaning closer, her voice firm but protective. That version was a facade. He was pretending. And what you discover today is that he can't be who you need. Not consistently anyway. She held my face, forcing me to sit in it. The version you wanted would never leave you feeling like this. I knew she was right, but my heart hadn't caught up yet. I can't believe that, I whispered, pain laced with the kind of denial that clings to hope just to survive. She sighed, already knowing where this was going. You know what I'm about to say. Dream. Not now. Now is the perfect time, she shot back. The only way to get over an old, stale man is to get under a new dream. Don't. I warned, my tone sharp now. Seriously, don't. Call Khalil, she said anyway, handing me my phone. Khalil can't fix anything, Dream. He got his own problems. I just talked to him yesterday, she said. He seemed fine. He misses you, even after you did him dirty. My whole world is falling apart right now, Dream, I snapped, standing up now, pacing. Khalil is the last thing on my mind. I have to make this work. We got kids, decades of love, and recently some kind of growth. That's not the kind of growth that helps you heal, she fired back. That's the kind of growth that kills everything healthy while he drags it down to hell with him. Her voice rose, frustration spilling over. This told you everything you need to know. Why can't you see it? Silence fell heavy between us. Maybe I don't want to see it, I said quietly. And maybe that's okay for now. She looked at me like she wanted to argue, but didn't. I leaned down, kissed her on her cheek, and walked out before she could stop me. I don't know why this time felt so different from the others, especially when I had already been so done before. But I couldn't give up on him this time, not without a clear sign that he was actually faking, because this felt too real, too good. And if it wasn't, then that meant I was a bigger fool than I'd ever want to believe. When I got home, I didn't confront him. I watched him. That was new for me. Usually, I reacted, felt first, exploded or folded. But this time, I paid attention. He was in the kitchen when I walked in, cooking like he had been doing every morning. Baby J was at the table, humming one of those little songs they had been practicing together. The house smelled warm, familiar, safe. And there he was, The version of him I had fallen back in love with. "Hey, baby," he said, turning to me with that same soft smile. "You good?" Same voice, same warmth, same man I had been defending just hours ago. "I'm good," I replied, studying him. He walked over, kissed me on the forehead, and went right back to cooking like nothing had shifted. Like nothing was shifting. And for a second, I almost believed it again. A few days later, we were back in counseling, sitting side by side like we had been doing everything right. "I don't know," I said slowly, choosing my words carefully. "Something feels off." Jay turned his head toward me, brows slightly furrowed like he was confused. "Off how?" he asked. I glanced at the counselor, then back at him. "I don't know. It just feels like your attention has shifted a little." The room got quiet. Jay let out a small breath and leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees like he was thinking it through. "It just feels like," he said softly, shaking his head, "nothing I do will ever be good enough." There it was, that tone. "I've been doing everything I can to fix what I broke," he continued. "I'm here. I'm present. I'm showing up for you every day. What else do you need?" He turned slightly toward the counselor. "I think she's just scared," he added, almost sympathetically. "It feels like she's waiting for me to mess up again." The counselor nodded slowly. "That's understandable," she said. "After everything you've been through, it's normal to feel that way, Charity." I looked at her, then back at him, and that's when it hit me. He wasn't reassuring me. He was redirecting the narrative, making it seem like the problem wasn't his behavior. It was my fear, my perception, my inability to trust. A game I had seen before, played softer this time, cleaner, but still the same game. "I'm not saying you're doing anything wrong," I said carefully, holding his gaze now. "I'm just saying something feels different." He reached for my hand. "I love you," he said, looking me dead in the eyes. "And I'm not going anywhere. You safe with me." The counselor smiled. "That's important to hear," she said. I forced a small smile back, but inside, something shifted, because I knew that move, that line, that exact false reassurance. It wasn't new. It was just better executed. That night, I didn't say much, didn't argue, didn't question. I just watched, waited, and then I heard his voice from the other room. I moved quietly down the hallway, my steps slow, controlled. The bedroom door was slightly cracked, and he was on the phone. "I told you, chill. She don't know nothing," he said, his voice softer than I had ever heard it. "I got it handled." My chest tightened. Then a pause. His tone shifted, lower, more intimate. "You good, though? You feeling okay?" Another pause. And that's when I heard it. Her voice, faint, but familiar. "Janine." My stomach dropped. "She won't find out," he said again, quieter now. "She ain't that smart, baby. She's still stuck on that we healing shit." He added with a small laugh. "She think I changed, for real." I froze. Every part of me went still. "Just give me a little more time." Another pause. Then, softer, almost careful. "Hey, you gotta chill stressing like that, though. That ain't good for you or the baby." Everything inside me dropped. Not again. Not her. Not another baby. "I told you, I got it," he said, his tone reassuring in a way I had begged him to be with me. "I'm not about to let nothing happen to y'all. Just do what you've been doing." Silence filled the space between his words and my understanding. This wasn't new, and this wasn't a mistake. This was ongoing, planned, maintained. Something inside me broke, not loud and not dramatic, just quietly, like the last piece of something I had been holding on to finally let go. I stepped back slowly, careful not to make a sound, careful not to let him know I heard a single word, because now I knew Janine wasn't the past. She was still here, still involved, still carrying his life again. And everything I thought we rebuilt was never real to begin with. This wasn't love. This wasn't growth. This was strategy. The next day, I paced Dream's bathroom floor like I had done so many times before. My heart racing, the smell of her perfumed detergent filled the room as she folded and hung her clothes, calm like nothing in the world was wrong. "I just don't understand," I said, my voice half angry, half exhausted. "Why pretend with me? We could have both been in happy relationships by now. To play with me for this long? It just don't make any sense." "Crazy men rarely have a rhyme or reason why they hold on so tightly to things they don't ever want," she said, shrugging like this was normal. "They want you when they want you, and they'll never let you go until they're done with you." All I could do was shake my head in disbelief. Toying with the ring he bought me to replace the one I had thrown out the window the day I thought I was done with us. "I feel like I'm on an emotional roller coaster," I said, tears collecting at the corners of my eyes. "I would go on my normal 'he is evil as hell' rant," she replied, "but we already know this." "I don't know what to do now," I said, pulling my knees to my chest, sitting in a fetal position, cradling myself like I could calm what was happening inside of me. Dream watched me for a while, quiet, thinking. She was texting someone. Then her phone rang. She stepped out to take the call. Her tone was serious, but calm. I couldn't hear the other voice. I could barely make out what she was saying. I figured she was busy. Maybe tired of hearing about my toxic relationship. Maybe uninterested. I leaned back on the bench, closed my eyes, and drifted off, figuring she'd wake me when she was ready to revisit the topic. I must have been out for a minute, because I woke up to her fingers gently rubbing the scar on my head. "Wake up, sleepyhead," she said softly. "How long was I out?" I asked, still groggy. "Not long enough," she replied. "You were exhausted, TT." "I know," I said, sitting up slowly. "I gotta go home. The kids are probably asking for me." She stepped in front of me before I could move, and the look on her face, I had never seen it before. She looked like a kid who had got caught stealing cookies and burned her hand in the process. "What did you do, Dream?" I asked, my heart already racing because I knew exactly where this was going. She hesitated. Don't get mad. "What did you do?" "Khalil is downstairs." The words hit instantly. She still looked caught, but there was something else in her face too. Like she believed she did the right thing. "Dream, why? He missed you, TT," she said gently, "and you missed him too." I backed down, tense as hell, nervous, afraid, ashamed, and a mix of emotions I couldn't name yet, because she wasn't wrong. I did miss him, but I wasn't supposed to. "This is not a good time to catch up with the guy I had an affair with," I said, my voice tight. "Just hear him out," she replied. Then she added, almost too casually, "Besides, you've been drinking. You probably shouldn't drive yourself home." Dream's house is pretty big, but it felt smaller now. The distance from her room to the living room seemed to have shortened as I turned the corner at the end of the hallway and saw his arm. Dream felt my hesitation and nudged me just enough to push me out of the hallway and right in front of him. I stumbled a bit and he caught me right before I lost my footing. In the moment I felt his hands around my waist, all those feelings came flooding back. "You good?" he asked, steadying me until he saw I wasn't wobbling anymore. I shot Dream an annoyed, piercing look before replying. "I'm fine, thank you." She shrugged and started backing toward the door. "Well, I gotta go to bed. Make sure my sister gets home safe," she said, trying to rush us out. I nudged her hard on the way out and gave her a "you got me messed up" look before fully walking out. I heard Dream and Khalil talking behind me, but I was kind of tipsy and my head was starting to pound from the injury. I made sure to cover it with my locks whenever I went out. Too much shame and embarrassment to have to explain it. I heard Dream's door close. Khalil walked around to the passenger side and opened the door for me. I hesitated. I knew how this could end, but I got in anyway. Jay didn't want this. There was no reason to hold on to false hope anymore. No reason to be good to a man who couldn't be good to me. I hit the lock on my car, texted Dream that I'd be back in the morning to get it, and got into Khalil's car. The drive was silent, but calm. He turned the music on as we hit the corner, leaving Dream's house. I faced the window, letting the air hit me, pulling my locks from my face as I disappeared into my thoughts. At one of the stoplights, I felt his hand on my back. Soft, soothing, caring. He reached over into my folded arms and grabbed my hand, holding it for the rest of the drive. That made it worse. When we pulled onto the street right next to mine, we stopped. Khalil just sat there, holding my hand, being present in a way only he could, understanding everything without me saying a word. I finally gathered the courage to look at him, and I didn't see the hate I thought I would. "Do you want me to take you all the way?" he asked. "No," I said, already knowing what would happen if Jay saw me in the car with a man I wasn't supposed to know. "Are you sure?" he asked in that way that made me question everything I thought I was sure about. I didn't answer. He reached up, grabbed my face, and gently pushed my hair back, revealing the scar I thought I had been hiding. He rubbed it, slowly. "Are you sure?" he asked again, slower this time. He knew. I pulled my hair back over it and nodded. "Yes." "You don't know what he's capable of," I said quietly. "Pushing someone like him could get deadly." "I'm not somebody you have to protect," he replied, a slight growl in his voice as he pushed a point he had been trying to make for a long time. "I am trying to protect both of us." He snapped for less. Khalil reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a metallic blue handgun, placing it on the center console between us. "They made one gun, they made another," I snapped. "Don't try to match him. That's not you." "You don't know who I am when it comes to protecting someone I care about," he said, calm but firm, in a way that almost made me back down. "I thought you were getting married," I asked, confused. Khalil leaned his head back, exhaled, and reached into his pocket, pulling out a thick blunt. He lit it slowly, letting the tip burn before taking a long pull, shaking his head like he was fighting something he didn't want to say. He never told me he lied. He just looked at me, and I already knew. I couldn't help but laugh, and he laughed too. Some sick joke this was. "I wanted a reason to contact you," he said, the blunt resting between his fingers. I took it from him, my shoulders easing a little as the tension started to loosen, the smoke filling the car as the feeling settled in. "You suck at this," I said, blowing smoke in his face. "At what?" he asked, inhaling his own cloud, pretending not to care. "I never wanted to do that with you," he said, setting the blunt in the ashtray, his attention shifting back to me, back to us. The tension sat there, heavy, unavoidable. "I'm sorry," I said finally. The words had been sitting in the back of my throat all night. "You don't owe me nothing, girl. I knew what I was getting into," he said, brushing it off. But I did owe him. I grabbed his beard and forced him to look at me. "You didn't deserve to be pushed away like you didn't matter," I said, softer now. He dropped his shoulders and exhaled like that was the one thing he had been waiting to hear. We locked eyes and stayed there, in that moment, where everything we felt finally had space to exist. A kiss. Deep, passionate, honest, the kind that made me want him so bad. I couldn't wait. And for the first time, in a long time, I didn't feel scared. I didn't feel like I had to shrink or explain myself or prepare for something to go wrong. With him, it was just easy. The kind of safe that doesn't ask you to be perfect, just present. The kind of love I thought life had already taken from me. The kind of love I never thought I'd get to feel after everything I'd been through. And in that moment, right there in his arms, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to believe before. If this was all I ever got, if this was the only time I ever felt a love like this, it would have been enough. I could have died happy, just knowing this kind of love existed for me. Finally choosing myself came with a cost I wasn't ready to pay. Like I said, love ain't free. And in the end, I paid the price with my life.
It's 11:31. Now the party's done. Get off the floor. Time to go home. Or you can stay the night. I know where we've been, yeah. But baby, that was then. Who knows where this goes? I'm scared of this ghost. Oh, don't assume I don't, just because I won't fall in. Maybe after this we can call it quits, destiny. Maybe we should try. Maybe we should try. What if it's different this time? What if we lose? What if we lose again? What if the story ends? What if we lose again? Again, no. It's 11:55. It's getting cold outside. It's colder in here. I made ice from my tears. No, don't assume I don't, just because I won't fall in. Maybe after this we can call it quits, destiny. But maybe we should try. Maybe we should try. What if it's different this time? What if we lose? What if we lose again? What if the story ends? What if we lose again? In my dream, I'll never let you go. We never were alone. Yeah. Like a rose, never grew its thorns, blossomed on our own. What if we lose? What if we lose again? What if the story ends? What if we lose again?